Okay, looks like we're just about ready to go.
All righty, there we go. All right, check in today. Who are you? Position in district. How are you? Time constraints. Who's missing? Issues, elephants, expectations. And the question for today is, do you have a sweet tooth or do you consider yourself salty? And we're going to start with Mila.
Oh, nice. Although some would call me salty, I have a raging sweet tooth. Love almost anything chocolate or pastry. And wow, I just jumped right to that question. Let me go backwards.
Sorry, threw you a curve there, Mila.
I think it's been a month since we met. I'm all out of it. All right, I'm Mila Shepard. I serve as the Chief of Human Resources, and I'm doing fine this afternoon, I think, and no time constraints and no issues or elephants. Chris Skidowski will not be able to join us today. He's enjoying a family event and well-deserved time off of the clock a little bit. So he's left us in good hands, and yeah, you've heard my answer to the question. So
very, very good. Sandy, is she on? I don't see
yes,
Sandy.
Oh,
there you
are.
There you go.
Yep.
There,
thanks,
I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on. I didn't hear the question of the day.
The question of the day is, do you have a sweet tooth or do you consider yourself salty?
Or salty. Okay. I'm Sandy Sorensen, science teacher at Northglenn High School. I'm doing good today. There's some good stuff going on, and I'm grateful for it. I don't have time constraints. I might get a phone call that I'd have to take for a few minutes, but that's it. Chris is missing, I guess. Anybody else? No. I have the sweet tooth, number one sweet tooth.
Very good. Linda.
Those little teeny boxes are hard for me to get my little teeny arrow in. I'm Linda Walther. I'm a retired counselor teacher from District 12. I'm fine today, thank you. I have no time constraints, no issues or elephants. We know Chris is missing. I expect that we'll do good work today. And that's a tough one because it depends upon the day. Some days I like the sweets, and sometimes I just want them together.
Yeah. All right, Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Alter. I'm a social studies teacher at Horizon High School. I'm doing pretty good today. I introduced the last unit in all of my classes, so it kind of like feels like we're in wind down time. Yeah. Got kids all excited about their final project. So no time constraints, no issues or elephants. I don't know who's missing other than Chris. And do I have a sweet tooth or a salty tooth? I refuse to choose. I like them both.
All right.
I can have it all.
Teresa.
Teresa Barajas, assistant principal at Northglenn Middle School. No time constraints today, no issues or elephants, and we all know Chris is missing. I'm not sure who else might be missing today. I'm salty. I totally am not big on sweets, but I do love popcorn and pretzels and like Chex Mix. That's my thing.
All right, Deborah.
Maybe Deborah's not here.
I see Deborah's on her phone. Deborah, can you hear us? I'll come back to Deborah. Shelley.
I'm Shelley Durock. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I teach third grade at Meridian Elementary. My time constraint is on the front end of this. I'm not quite at a good spot. I can hear everyone for right now. I have no issues or elephants. I have high expectations as always. I'm eager to get running and up and running again after our spring vacation. And I have a sweet tooth. My day is not complete until I finish the day with a nugget of sweet.
Thank you. Heather Espinoza.
Hi, Heather Espinoza. I teach second grade over at Woodglen. I am fine. I might have a time constraint on around 7. I have to pick up a kid from practice, but if it's still light out, then they can walk home. I'm not sure what time the sun is setting these days, though. So we will cross that bridge when we get there. We know who's missing. No time. I do have a time constraint. Great expectations, as always, to get through that agenda and make some good decisions for our folks. And definitely a sweet tooth.
Oh.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bo Fobert. I have the pleasure of serving the district as Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. No issues, no elephants, no time constraints tonight. Salty, all the way, and lots of it, please.
Sounds good. Heather Gracious.
Hi, everyone. Heather Gracious, Director of Elementary for Student Support Services. I'm really good today. It's been a good week. I have no time constraints, no issues or elephants. We know who's missing. Some might say that I'm salty, but I have a sweet tooth.
Dorman.
Yeah, I forgot where the unmute button was too. So I am Dorman Land. I am a teacher, and I am not doing very well today. This week has been pretty bad. No time constraints, no issues or elephants. We know who's missing, and I am very sweet. Everybody knows I'm sweet. I don't act salty very often. So, or was it about food? I'm sweet. Food, I like sweet as well.
All right, Nancy.
Right again.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Leonard. I'm a retired principal with District 12. I'm feeling good. Don't have any time constraints, issues, or elephants. No. We know Chris is missing, and I don't see Marty.
Right.
So,
you need to get down.
Yeah. Right. Expectations, as always, we'll do good work. I know that. I like both, but I can't quit eating salty things.
Laura Leppy.
Hi guys. Also, Linda, you never remuted, by the way. I just wanted to let you know, dear. I'm Laura Leppy. I teach middle school math at Holstrom. I am doing super well. I also am getting close to starting my last unit in math, my last 2 in my honors savvy class. So I'm super stoked. I'm with you, Allison. We're doing it. We're going to go dance in that field behind you or something. We'll just put the little thing back over your camera, disappear. We know who's missing. I'm out of order. I have no time constraints. This whole court's out of order. I have no issues or elephants, except for apparently my own life. And I like that you said, do you have a sweet tooth or are you salty? Like, as opposed to, do you prefer salty things? But I'm with Mila because I am a little salty, but I don't like salty things. As I'm sitting here eating my chocolate sea salt caramels and my almond M&Ms, because that is what I now officially live on during these meetings. So I'm 100% the sweet, like Dorman sweet. And big hugs, Dorman. I'm sorry you had a bad week.
Dave.
Afternoon, Dave Lockley, president of DTA. Doing well today, as well as anybody going right now. We're all just kind of coasting and just trying to get to the end. Do you have a short time constraint between 6 and 7? I'll be stepping to another call for a moment, and then I should return with no delay. I have no issues or elephants. My expectations is that we're going to learn a whole lot about FMLA and leaves and all kinds of really exciting stuff that, oh, shucks, I think I'm missing that part, Mila. Oh, I'm so sad. But as far as the question goes, I guess I'm similar to someone else who said that they have to be both sweet and salty, because like I don't like salty things by themselves. I mean, that's okay, and sweet okay by itself, but nothing is better than chocolate, peanut butter, and pretzels put together. There's just nothing in this world better. So,
Laura Mitchell.
Good evening. I'm Laura Mitchell. I serve on the Board of Ed. I'm okay today. Stressful times. No time constraints, no issues in elephants. Chris is missing, and I think we figured out there was one more person missing. And I'm definitely a chocolate sweets all the way.
Kathy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Plomer. I'm doing okay today. It's a little tired, but you know, it's beautiful out, so that always helps. No time constraints, no issues or elephants. We know Chris and Marty are missing, and I love salty food, but I eat plenty of sweets, so you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Powers, principal at Riverdale Elementary. I'm doing well today. I do have a little bit of a time constraint. I need to attend an appointment at 7 tonight with my daughter, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to return. I don't have any elephants or issues, and we know who's missing, and I'm definitely salt all the way.
Ian.
So I'm Ian Savlich. I teach language arts and language development at North Glen Middle School. I'm doing really well. A little bit of extra pep after getting into the school yesterday. No time constraints, issues, elephants. As always, expect great cooperation here and good conversation, getting through some issues. Got Marty and Chris out today. You know, I've got to say both. I'm not going to choose. I'm not going to be forced.
Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Schmidt. I am the principal at Pathways. The last time I checked, I am doing fine this afternoon. My only current issue is that I'm looking outside at gorgeous weather and I'm going to be on a video call. So that's becoming fun. But yeah, I'm good. And let's see here. No elephants, although the baby elephant sounds kind of fun. And time constraints, nope, all set there as well. My expectation is we'll continue to plow through the work that we do. All that good stuff. We know who's missing. And yeah, why in the world would we choose? I like sweets. I like salts. I like food, and I'm not really big on withholding from what I like. So I'll take both of them.
All right. Deborah, can you talk to us now? I can see you now. Except she's frozen. Oh, there we go. Deborah.
Wow. Sorry. First
you're
time
good.
trying to do this in the car. That was an experience. Hi, I'm Deborah Blake, special education teacher at Arapahoe Ridge Elementary School. I am just pulling into my garage, so sorry about that. I'm feeling a little schizophrenic right now. Time with my groups are going great. The students are showing lots of growth. They're having some fun. Things are great in that regard, but it's the beginning of the crazy time in special ed. We start getting slammed with last minute requests and all of that. So, and a lot of meetings this week. So I'm just feeling a little up and down about that. Other than that, no issues or elephants, no time constraints other than when I'm done with this, I'll turn off my camera until I can hook back up on my computer. And we know who's missing. And I agree, sweet, salty, best combined. That's the way to go.
Thanks, Deborah. Jim.
I'm Jim. I'm one of your facilitators. I'm doing well. I don't have any time constraints. We've been through who's missing. Don't have any issues or elephants. Expectations are to complete the agenda and do a checkout by 8:15. You know, like with many things, either sweet or salty, I'd say one is probably too many and 100 isn't enough. So once I get started, I'm there.
And I'm Dave. I'm your other facilitator. I'm doing fine tonight. No time constraints. I'm yours till till you're done with Jim and I. We know Marty and Chris are missing. No issues or elephants. My expectations are is you just keep doing the good work that you've been doing. This is such a fun group to work with, and I enjoy it. So my expectations are to have that fun still. It's sweet or salty. I'm like everybody else. I think I like both, and I'm like Jim. If I get started on one, I can't stop. So you know, it's the old lays. You can't eat just one, and that is so true with either sweet or salty for me. So, all right. I think on our agenda we have the review of the recommendations of the writing group of Article 27.8. Correct?
That is correct, Dave.
Hey, can I just hold on a second? Hey, Jean, would you let Marty in? He's waiting for the host.
I was about to say the same thing because I think Shelley is as well. So.
Oh, okay. And Jean, maybe make Dave or me the co-host. Yeah, while you're at it. Okay. Back to the.
Dave, before you do that, let's get them checked in too. Okay. So, Marty, are you able to check in? The questions are, who are you, position in district? How are you, time constraints, who's missing, issues, elephants, expectations, and then do you consider yourself to have a sweet tooth or do you consider yourself salty?
Marty McCarthy, principal at Thornton Middle School. No issues or elephants. I just know now that I am not missing. And no time constraints. I think everybody knows that I'm salty.
All right, thanks, Marty. Yeah. All right, Dave, back to you.
All right. So one of the groups we were working on at the end of last time was class coverage, Article 27.8. In your drive, if you want to go in there, is the charts for that section that we were working on. At the very bottom is the work that the group pulled together a couple of days ago as a kind of combined process or looking at the different language. We kind of combined it together and moved it into what we think might be potential contract language format. Give everybody a second to read it. And then anyone else can make color commentary from the group and then take questions from everybody.
Can you repeat where it is in the drive? I missed one of the steps somewhere.
Yep. So it's in the document in our folder called Chart Article 27.8 Class Coverage. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that document is the location of the writing group's work.
And Dave, I'm assuming that when they're done, we'll open it up for questions or comments, correct?
Yeah, I was gonna make a couple of comments and then ask any of the writing group to add any additional thoughts they had before taking questions. But yeah,
very good.
Just looked like people were still reading.
Yeah, yeah. I was just checking in with you, Dave.
Like most people are just about done. Is there anybody who needs another moment? Seeing none. If you saw someone, please tell me, but I didn't see anybody. So we were taking the language. The issue that we're trying to solve was two-folded. One, verifying that when a certified educator does class coverage, regardless whether they're a teacher or someone else, that teacher or that certified educator taking over that class, supervising it on class coverage, qualifies for this language, but also this other component of what happens when you have to take on the job responsibilities of somebody else for a long-term absence. And it's not necessarily class coverage. You know, the example I keep bringing up, but I'll just use it again just for consistency's sake, is, you know, a school nurse taking over the schools of another nurse's schools during a maternity leave or out for medical surgery or something like that. So a long-term absence, not just a single day where they're just backing up a school nurse or something, but we're now taking on the responsibility, the legal responsibility of that workload, that space. So what we did here was we combined some of the different language and what we believed was the intent of the different charts. We felt like we were pretty close. And we brought together the two different sections, and things that I would just highlight is a distinction in the language between taking over the responsibility, like when there's two folks in the classroom versus one folk in the classroom. And that's why we use the language class or students of the educator. The example that we discussed was like in a co-teaching situation. The general education teacher who's in there every single day is not covering the special education minutes for the special educator that might be out that day if there's no sub provided. However, conversely, if a special educator is taking over the responsibility of and instructing the whole class, that they are taking on the responsibility of those additional students. And the assumption oftentimes is those minutes would have to be made up at a different point, which will most likely eat into the plan time of that educator and make them work in some other capacity. So we felt like it was appropriate to distinguish that it's clarify that small space as well. I'd ask if there was anyone else in the group that would want to add any other commentary or highlight or raise up anything that they wanted to tell the group.
Dave, I want to ask you to jiggle the cords on your microphone or something, because although you're intelligible, there's some static that keeps popping into your line. So I don't know what's happening with you, but
I don't have any mics plugged in. I'll try to do something with it. And if it keeps up, I'll probably leave and come back.
Yeah.
Power cycle in my life.
Power cycle yourself. Yeah. Okay. So I think the thing that I would draw to your attention is the language. about halfway through this entire paragraph that says when an educator assumes the assignment or part of the assignment, and then in parentheses it says in addition to their own assignment. And so this is meant to add clarity to the idea that we've talked about before, where, for example, a dean of students who is completely relieved of all of their discipline and dean duties in order to go and step in and teach social studies for a week or something. When it's in lieu of your duties, then there's not a need for working on a compensation plan. But when we're piling on to your duties, then we wanted to, that was something that this group had talked about. And so we believe that's covered in that parenthetical part of the statement.
Allison?
Okay, so that's just not how I read it. Because I read
That's
it.
why I said it out loud.
Yeah. I read it as when you assume an assignment or a different situation is you assume part of assignment, that either way you're going to be compensated is how I read it. So I don't know if I'm wrong because I'm not a contract whiz.
Well, let's talk that through, because I think, intent and language, this is the time to get it right. So, and maybe I'm reading more into it than was ever the intent.
I would say that was definitely what you are describing was what the group discussed trying to capture in language. And so if we need to add something to provide clarity to that, I'm more than glad to add more stuff. That was if that is the will of the body, that was the intent the writing group put together in that parens.
I mean, as I was reading it, that's what I remembered, and I wasn't in the writing group, but so that's why I was like, oh, I thought you guys went the other way, but
Marty was in the group. Go ahead.
I mean, I remember that getting tossed around last time. I think the language that we put in there when it says in addition to your responsibilities I think that precludes you from getting paid for both. I mean, or if you're not taking something in addition, then you're not going to get paid for both.
I wonder how we can state that most clearly.
I think it's the comma that's throwing me, because it made me feel like the parentheses only applied to the part of the assignment in addition to.
So maybe something like when an educator assumes the assignment or any portion of an assignment in addition to their own assignment.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could, I don't know, grammatically, I'm not an English teacher, but if you just took out the comma.
Yeah.
I think maybe we could do that.
And I think that the should be changed to
there.
An. Right? Part of an assignment.
Well, it says the assignment before, so it's the assignment that you're assigned to, but I'm with you on that. I think that.
I mean, I think they should both be ands. When an educator assumes an assignment or part of an assignment.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Can you, if you move the paragraph that says in addition to their own assignment to the end where it's after vacancy, would that make more sense or less sense? So it read when.
Say that again, Laura.
When an educator assumes an assignment or part of an assignment of another educator's for an extended absence or vacancy, in parentheses, in addition to their own assignment, the educator, their supervisor, and HR shall mutually agree upon, like moving it to after the word vacancy. Does that make more sense?
Folks,
I think so.
Yeah, so if you want to raise your hand, it's not at the bottom of the participants, it's actually in your reactions one too. So, and I'm giving you some leeway here. People are just popping in, but if it gets out of control, I have to, I have to make you raise your hand, guys. You're doing fine. So Laura, look that over. Is that where you wanted that? Does that look right?
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. And I apologize for popping in. I blame
No,
the saltiness of the opening question.
You're all salty tonight, huh?
We're all salty.
Allison, does that clarify it for you? Does that help you out? You're muted, Allison.
Yeah, I think it reads a little weird now, but like that's just picky. I feel like it makes sense for what is after, or like what we're after.
Thank you. I have Nancy and then Kathy.
My question is about the end of it. Do we give examples as part of our language in general?
There are occasions that we do examples for example, when thinking about the makeup of high school classes. It could be 50-minute period, 5 50-minute periods, or 1 90-minute period. And so there are times when we give examples to add clarity to what is given. Is it completely necessary to give examples? No, I don't know that it's completely necessary in this case. I do helpful for those people who are applying this language in the future, to have some capturing of our intent of like what this could look like as an example, because otherwise we want to have some kind of holding on to it for the future.
Kathy.
So mine, and Mila just made some changes because I I was looking at that same thing because part of it said they could be and the other said they will be. So it was kind of like you were setting policy for one in the example, but not for the other. So I think it's good. And it did, I haven't seen examples in other language, but as long as it's consistent, that makes more sense that it's a possibility for, both.
Sandy.
Should it be shall instead of could or will? Linda?
Are you talking about in the example space?
Yeah. When it says they could be compensated on an hourly basis, should it be shall be compensated?
No, because I think I really want to keep my intent when we put these examples is to create ideas of what it could look like, not say that it had to be every time, because that would make it every time. And I don't know that is the perfect, that was what was done in the past. I don't know that that's the right perfect example. If we were to, I would prefer to not have it be dictated exactly to what that looks like at this time. I would feel like we would need to do far more work to make sure that is the right equitable answer universally if we were to make them shalls.
It could be may or might also.
Because what would be the criteria of doing it versus not doing it? Maybe that's where I'm hung up. It's not clear where they would receive it or where they wouldn't.
Well, it kind of depends on the scope. I think what we talked about was it depends a lot on the size of the lift for the teacher. And so, for example, Marty asks one of his teachers, can you make sure the sub has the lessons? And Marty says, oh yeah, we group planned that. I just need to run copies and drop them in her box. Okay, that's not a big lift. And Marty and his teacher collaboratively agree that, there's no need to compensate for that the work was done. I just need to drop something in an email. Or, same situation. And Marty's talking to his teacher and the teacher says, yeah, that would be a big lift. I would have to prepare a lot of stuff. I would have to, spend some time. And then there's a collaborative agreement that, hey, it's appropriate to pay them for their time to help with the planning. I think that's one example of a case where it's just, we didn't want to limit supervisor and employee from figuring out what best meets the need in their particular situation at their particular time. And we threw in the president of DTA and the HR department so that we could ensure that, like, if a teacher was feeling like, well, I really think I should get paid, and the principal's like, I don't think that's a big deal at all. If there's any disagreement at all, we've got these third parties that have a more broad perspective and a more perhaps neutral point of view that can help find the right balance.
Norman. Dorman, you're still muted, sir.
Yeah, well, I do this all day long. You think I'd remember? I wonder if my students just let me talk on and on and on, and I'm muted the whole day. So this reads to me that when an educator is doing 2 assignments simultaneously, someone else is in theirs, they shall come together and agree upon a compensation package with denoted people. So there shall be some sort of agreement going on. And then all the rest of it is just examples and coulds. Like, it could be done through comp time, it could be done with money, it could be done this way, it could be done that. So it's just some advice. So the shall is that they shall be compensated if the parties agree. And then the rest is just example. So I think that's where the shalls and coulds are.
Linda, you did have your hand up. Was that what you were going to say too, or are you?
I agree with Dorman, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? Other discussion?
Dorman, your hand is up.
And Linda's is now too. So Dorman, did you have more? Linda?
Who determines what the time frame is for the extended absence? Are we talking 3 days, 5 days? Does it vary? 'Cause I don't see any clear definition for what an extended absence or vacancy would look like.
So we had that conversation as part of our discussions, because one group tried to create a definition of what that looks like. And the job assignment, depending on what job assignment you're talking about, it could look vastly different. A teaching job assignment versus an audiologist versus a nurse versus the how long an extended absence is can be very variable. I think that is what also gives us what I believe in this language gives either party, the principal or the teacher, the ability to raise their hand and say, this is now an extended absence. We need to be mutually agreed upon the compensation of this additional work. I'm sure that in the HR world, they could define for us what in general a extended absence looks like. But it would be difficult to create an exact time frame that would be accurate for everybody. For a classroom, it could be only 2 or 3 days. For a nurse, 2 or 3 days is not an extended absence, nor would you want to legally transfer over all of the medical responsibilities for the nurse for even a week, potentially. So, we would have to go job class by job class within the certified ranks and define what an extended absence might look like.
Linda?
I guess I'm just concerned about consistency from one building to another. I know we've had some issues in the past determining who should get paid and who shouldn't get paid based upon the opinion of an office manager. And so for me, that shows there is inconsistency within how this money, if it's determined that the money should be paid. So that's my real concern is how are you consistent from one building to the next or one principal to the next?
Marty.
I think that the language now is clear about that if you're covering a class that you get paid that $35 an hour. I think that's where the inconsistency was before. I think that the stuff that is in that second part around additional duties or additional assignment is really gonna, if there's an open period that you need covered or an open classroom that you need class coverage on, that's really clear that that money gets paid for per hour. But what's unclear is how much time it takes to plan a lesson or how much time, extra time it takes to plan a lesson or gather materials or do those things that are kind of the unseen part that nobody, I believe, actually was probably getting compensated for before. And so to me, this rectifies that situation in which almost nobody got compensated for extra work and clarifies that everybody should be compensated at the same rate for covering class.
Sandy.
That's an interesting perspective, Marty. Because I was thinking that it just seems so very subjective or maybe even arbitrary. It clears up a lot of things, like you said, but I think a ton of it seems to me that it's how anybody might interpret it. So I don't know. I'm kind of thumbs sideways on this right now. So I guess I would be interested in pursuing like more work on this, or I don't know how to proceed, but I'm not completely there yet on this one.
Okay, I have Linda, Dave, and Marty again. Linda?
So am I understanding, Marty, that they could get paid for the actual teaching of the class plus money for preparation? So are we going from 35 to maybe 70 or 38 to maybe 70 or 34, whatever it is? Did I misunderstand you?
Marty, you can answer that question. Go ahead.
So right now, the most common situation is teacher called in a sub, no sub shows up. I think that's why we're here. Really what is needed is class coverage, right? There's a lesson plan written, all of that stuff is happening. So when that is the case, I think we really needed to clear up that anybody who did that got paid $34 an hour to do that, right? So I think that's that first part. I feel like we were all on kind of consensus when we looked at all the different straw design groups around that. The second part is, like those unseen things. Now, if I'm asking you to cover every fifth period for the next week because I have a teacher's out that's for a week, and all you're doing is covering, then you should just get paid the $34 an hour. If, on the other hand, I'm saying, and can you write that lesson for that class? You should probably get some sort of additional payment for that. Now, I think that we wanted to be flexible in this arena because it depends on who's covering it and who's doing the work and what that looks like, right? If you're in the same PLC and you guys normally write the lesson and you're delivering the same lesson that you've written before, and you're simply just making extra copies and delivering it one more time, I'm not saying you shouldn't get compensated for that, but maybe not the full, something that you would compensate somebody who's having to write a lesson plan from scratch. And so we felt like this language here gave us the ability for the administrative team and the teacher to have some negotiations to figure out what would be fair in any certain situation. And then also have the recourse to have HR and the union look at the solution to make sure that it was fair, or if there was a disagreement about whether it was fair or not. So this is kind of our attempt at really trying to find a way to have a system that will fit the most situations and be flexible enough to make sure people can get compensated in a way that they feel comfortable with, depending on the job. Does that help, Linda?
Okay, I have a long speaking list now. I have Dave, Bo, Deborah, Laura, Linda. Dave.
So I would have a couple of points that just pull up in this conversation. One, we use the term extended absence a lot of times in the contract, and there's no definition of how long an extended absence is. There's the notification window, like after X number of days, you have to notify your administrator if you're going to be absent, but the term extended absence is used periodically without definition. So that's just one thing I would just highlight. If we go to define extended absence now, we would have to make sure that we are defining something that would be accurate for the other times as well. We use it like extended leave of absence and extended absence, return for, we use it in several different categories. So I would just want to be careful that if we go too deep into defining what that looks like, that we might find ourselves in creating more trouble than we're actually fixing. The other thing that I would kind of highlight in this conversation to address the consistency issue is that's why we have the HR team involved in the conversation, and Mila and I in the final seat of, yep, this is or is not consistent or fair or reasonable. You know, that's where our jobs, both the HR team who supervise, whole levels of schools, and Mila's and I's job is to make sure that it is consistently applied. Currently, there is no court of appeal. Sometimes best practice is if you're having a long-term absence and teacher uses, asking a teacher to do the sub plans, Marty may pay them X rate, Johnny may pay them at X rate. They may give some comp time. They may do some of this, but it's very not consistent across the board right now. What this does is try to create an avenue to create consistency without knowing what that consistency should be. And if we're struggling to find consistency, then I would recommend we bring it back to the table because it needs more clarity and refinements because we find ourselves in conflict. Right now, I couldn't tell you what that consistency should be right now across the board because this is a space of growth, and because we don't really know the answer. But this gives us the ability to manage and monitor what that is in the move as we're moving forward.
Oh.
So it probably says we've spent a lot of time together over the years that Marty and Dave literally, I think, parroted so much. I wanted to say, or I guess I'm parroting them now because I'm going after them. But essentially, I appreciate this perspective of worry about subjectivity or open-endedness. But as I hear the writing team talk about it, it seems as we contemplate this in practice and we recognize that we have a master agreement that has a broad umbrella of educators underneath it, and that each and every scenario in which coverage might be provided likely has a lot of nuance in it by level, by assignment. And what I appreciate here is allowing for more oversight in terms of how it's applied, more opportunities for anyone in the stream to contact their representatives for support. And then I appreciated Dave's piece there at the end, because I believe if this does not work the way we intended it to, that's why we exist, to come back and revisit and tighten up where we go. But I think to really dial this down as much as we might like, this would take maybe an impossible length of time to try to nail down every situation and every derivative of coverage that might happen. So I appreciate what Marty said as they contemplated the work, and Dave's piece around this does have some protections and some guardrails in it, and the opportunity for this team to continue to revisit it over time. So, all right, thanks guys.
Deborah, you did have your hand up. Are you okay?
Well, I kind of been going back and forth. I just kind of wanted to comment. Marty had made the comment, and for me, Marty, I think you did an excellent job of clarifying the thinking and the process. But one kind of issue that came up, which, yeah, kind of also gets addressed in my second point, is if you're just covering the class, you get the 34 an hour. But then if you are also lesson planning, you're going to get more. To me, that just means I'm just keeping track of all of my hours. If I am covering from 10 to 10:45, but then I have to also plan, I'm just going to tack that on to my time. So it's, in a way, it's still, I'm getting paid extra, but it's still a portion or all of that 34 an hour. It's not a double amount for lesson planning and covering, if that makes sense, right? If I'm covering from 9 to 4 or 9 to 12, and then if lesson plans are done, I can do my own job from 12 to 1, and then I go back and cover. I'm not paid for that hour, but if that hour is spent also lesson planning or after school lesson planning, I'm just keeping track of all of my supplemental hours as opposed to more pay on top of it. But then I also, one of the concerns that I had in all of this was leaving it up to the school and the administrators made me a little uncomfortable. Some schools have money to pay them. Others say, okay, we're gonna give you an hour off early. You can leave early on Friday to make up for that. So I really appreciate having HR and the DTEA president in there to make sure that there is a little bit more consistency, because I have seen that where one school will say, yeah, we can pay you, absolutely. And another will say, we just don't have that money in our budget. We just can't do it. And so we'll make it up a different way. So I do appreciate that extra balance in there.
I have Laura, Linda, Marty. Laura?
So Deborah kind of touched on what I was processing, and I'm with Marty 100% because we had, and this was story, but I didn't know this was part of the story because I didn't realize we were talking about this. I don't think, maybe I did. But either way, the difference between like a teacher leaving and then somebody having to write the plans and then cover at the same time, or like the teacher next door was out and I went back and forth and taught my lesson while they did warm-ups. Then I went to her class and taught their lesson while my kids worked. And then I came back to my room and then I signed all the homework for both of the classes for 3 weeks while she was out dealing with something, and like there is no compensation for that. But I do like the idea. And what I was going to say is that the other teacher who did it for a teacher who resigned and then we had to wait like 2 months to get a teacher, she filled out a timesheet, like Deb was saying. So something along the lines, and maybe it has to be reworked, like Bo was saying, maybe we need to take it back to somewhere to get some sort of clarification. But if there was some sort of, like you get $34 for the coverage, right, Marty? And then if on that timesheet, if there were a way, or maybe a different one, I don't know, that you just filled out like 30 minutes doing the plans or like 45 minutes doing, this and this and this or whatever. And it's all kind of in the same realm so that it is consistent and it is clarified and it is, mutually agreed upon by everybody. So maybe that if we don't have a sheet that looks like that and we can't use the $34 an hour sheet for it for extra time, like Deb was saying, maybe there's a different one that's not quite like your per diem dollars if you do something outside of contract time, but maybe there's something in between or some sort of way to alter the $34 an hour timesheet that you fill out that then includes the planning that went into it if you were doing the planning or something along those lines. That's what I was thinking.
Linda, Marty, and Sandy. Linda?
I guess I have a part of my confusion about the extended absences. When I look right above that at 22.1.2.1, it talks about long-term coverage defined as 3 consecutive days. So do you see my confusion? One is called long-term and it's defined, and another is called extended and it's not defined.
Sorry, Linda, we made that up.
That was group 3. And we were just wrestling with the idea of did extended absence need a definition? That was group
Okay.
3. And then as we morphed
Okay.
into this final product,
Okay.
we agreed that extended could mean a lot of different things, and we were fine with
Okay.
the term.
Okay, thank you. That helps clarify it for me. Also, I would echo Deborah's concern about whether the building has to pay for the additional planning time that's required to do the substitution. The other thing that I'm confused about is when we talk about an hour, are we talking about 60 minutes? Because that was not the original intention of that. The original intention was the period or the block of time. And so I don't ever remember if I covered somebody else's class that it was based upon minutes. It was based upon a class period. So I'm confused about that also.
Marty and then Sandy.
Yeah, I don't think I think part of the reason that we ended where we were was because it wasn't supposed to be like the past practice hasn't been to compensate people for minutes. It's been for class coverage, right?
Right.
So, that's, I think, another nuance in this, and that, filling out supplemental timesheets was not how we've done this in the past. I think that's, and then I think another one of our intentions here was that I know that some teachers value other forms of compensation besides extra pay.
Mhm.
Some teachers really do value comp time or other things. And so, if you can come to a mutual agreement where you're going to get more comp time than you would get for a minute's paid, it can be beneficial to both the school budget and the teacher.
Understand.
So it just feels like we wouldn't want to exclude that if people wanted to do that. And then by having the catch from HR and the union representation, that was our insurance that it wouldn't be abused, or that one party wouldn't agree to it if they didn't want to.
Okay.
Sandy.
So I guess I really appreciate this conversation. This is helping me figure it out too. I guess the only other question I have about this is that when this originally came up, Dave used the example of the nurses. And Dave, you were in the writing group, so I'm assuming this is the case, but so you think this will satisfy like problems like the nurse situation? You think this will do the trick?
Yeah, like when I described in story, this was a practice that they had appreciated in the past. And when I suggested would this be a fair, equitable solution for the future, they said in general, yes, not knowing all the different nuances and whatnot, some people's nursing assignment, just like teaching assignments, looks different. And so for a generic assignment, they were like, yeah, this example makes a lot of sense to us. But once again, even in that example, a preschool nurse that has to deal with trachs and other medical procedures that are above and beyond what other nurses may have to do, that agreement may look very different because that's assuming a much different assignment than they're currently assuming, if that makes sense what I'm saying. So even in my example, even though they said, yeah, this totally makes sense for the vast majority of situations, there's going to be situations where it doesn't make sense. And I wouldn't want to just carve it in and say, this is it. That's what I like this might look like or could look like language, because it's not always going to be the same. I'm a social studies teacher by trade, and me planning that, helping the teacher an extended absence in the same common course team looks very different than me helping a teacher who's not on my common course team, because I got to go learn a whole new content. And we have singletons out there in our buildings where if a building person was to help that sub make plans or do that kind of work, it's really well outside of their normal comfort zone. The orchestra teacher may understand what the choir teacher does, but it's not the same class. They're qualified to teach both. And so what I, helping my 8th grade social studies colleagues might think is reasonable might not be the same thing that orchestra teacher and band teacher situation might be.
Laura, your hand's still up. Did you have more?
No, I don't think I can
Okay.
put it down.
Go back to the reactions and it'll say lower hand. Did you find it? I'm going to go to Linda.
You're on mute, Linda.
Linda, you're muted.
Thank you. I always have some concerns about when we use the term comp time, because in some cases it's very difficult. If I'm an elementary teacher, and you said I can have a half a day of comp time, I still have to write the lesson plans for that half a day. So I just want us to be very careful about how we would talk about comp time. If I am teaching, if I don't teach first period and you say you can come in late that day as your comp time, that's fine, except I've lost my planning period. So I just want us to be very careful about how we use comp time.
Marty?
I think that's why we have the piece around the mutual agreement and the vetting space from HR, you know.
All right. I was going to say I don't see any other hands, but Laura's is still up. That's all right. It's okay. It's okay, Laura. So are you ready to act on this, or is there more work that needs to be done?
You're asking me. I think I haven't heard work that I could go do right now. However, if we take a vote and people are thumbs down or thumbs sideways, then we can and we can go from there.
So you're
I
asking
agree.
for a vote is what you're saying, right, Dave?
I agree.
All right. So I assume everybody's read it over at least once. Let me see where your thumbs are. Okay, we have 2 thumbs sideways, but you have consensus. Deborah and Linda, do you want, is there anything that can move your thumb up?
I'm just still uncomfortable with the compensation piece, like Linda said, the piece about HR and DTEA being in there, but Linda's right when she says in elementary, if you get time off, you either lose a planning period or you have to write lesson plans, or when you're given 30 minutes off at the end of the day, it doesn't do me any good because I still have to pack up everything to go home. So it just makes me uncomfortable, but I understand and accept the language about HR and DTEA being in there. So I'm willing to live with it and I will go out and defend it. I'm just not breathing easy about it.
Thank you, Deborah. Linda? You're muted now, Linda, one more time. There you go.
I'm telling you, cataract surgery isn't always perfect. I'm kind of coming from the same place Deborah is, and that is that I can live with the department or the HR head and the DTEA president being a part of that conversation if necessary. But I still am very concerned about how we use compensation time. And so I still am going to be a thumb sideways.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Oh.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to share, this goes back to my time when I was in the PD director role and was tangentially involved in a lot of these. Many times the folks that end up picking up these coverages are non-classroom teacher pieces, and they, believe it or not, really do like the compensatory time because they don't have those classroom responsibilities. So again, not trying to sway anyone, but just know we're talking about a lot of different people. And some people that end up doing this, they do in fact like the compensatory offering, which is why I think this point about mutually agreed is important. But sometimes these people are ones that don't have to write the lesson plans, and therefore I think have more opportunity for it. So just sharing that there's multiple people involved in these situations often.
All right, very good. So you do have consensus on this. Linda, your hand's up again. Go ahead.
As someone who's served in that position as a counselor, if I take compensatory time during the day, the other counselor is going to have to take over for me. If there's a crisis that happens, and it's one of my students, then I'm not there to take care of it. Somebody else has to do that. And I think that's not true. That's not just counselors that's true with. I'm sure there are other non-classroom teachers that have the same kind of thing. Someone has to take over when you're not there. So again, what I've done then is taken the time that I want, but shifted my responsibilities to someone else. So I just think that there are a lot of ways to look at this, and it's not that I don't think compensatory time is okay. I just think we have to be careful how we use it, and that we don't create a situation where, yep, I get my comp time, but somebody else has to cover for me.
Deborah.
Yeah, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but Linda also brought up a good point. A lot of times with special education, we get our Wednesdays to test, to observe, to write IEPs, to meet with parents, to hold our meetings. And there are times when we don't get coverage for the classroom teacher, and one of us has to go in and cover that classroom teacher. I am now losing my Wednesday time to do my special education job. I'm helping out a teammate. I'm helping out the teacher so that the teacher who's legally required to be there can be there, but then my job's not getting done. It's a half an hour here, it's 45 minutes there. We make it work, but it's a situation where when I'm covering and I'm not being compensated, or again, that's when my principal says, leave half an hour early. Okay, that means I leave at 5:30 instead of 6 in my case. So, not to beat a dead horse, but I do think there are a lot of situations where covering over here leaves something undone over here.
Dave.
Yeah, I just remind everybody about the conversation is, if you're covering a class, you're getting paid, not comp time. And all certified educators class under this, the way we've read this, they're getting comp time. Paid, the $34 an hour. Ones where we're talking about comp time is where you are you're doing your job and someone else's job after an extended absence or during an extended absence of time. Those are very different situations and are actually much rarer than the ones that I think many of us are referring to, which is just I need to go cover because the teacher needs to go out, or go cover a class because they need to go to an IEP meeting or to a meeting with HR, right? Those are class coverages, and those are $34 an hour. That's universal. Now with this language, it's just when you're writing the plans of, or because we can't fill a position, you now have to write the IEPs for your for the other learning specialist in your group because you've assumed the responsibility. And that's when a conversation happens between your administrator, HR, and you to determine what is the appropriate level of compensation. And then you can plan it out, right? If the compensation time is, hey, I'm about to go, I'm Chris Gadowski and I'm going to my I won't say what it is because you were, I think Maya was specifically not saying what was outside line. I'm out of town this weekend because I have a scheduled thing. Maybe I'd much rather have that 8 hours of comp time so I don't burn a whole temp day that I can then cash out at 40% of my per diem when I leave the district, or use to get into sick leave bank or something like that. So those situations in this language, those are the mutually agreed upon situations based on a prearranged kind of setup. And if they don't want to do it because it has to be mutually agreed upon, you know, there's a lot of leeway in there for the educator and for the administrator to make it, to figure out the right way to go.
Fair point. Thank you, Dave.
All right, Bo and Laura. Laura, I know you can't get your hand down. Sorry. Still have your hand up. Bo, were you done too? All right. So, does anybody need a biology break real quick before we jump into the next thing? You've been at it for a little over an hour. I'm seeing thumbs go up. So,
let's say 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Does that work for people?
So do you want me to teach biology during the break? Because that'd be great.
We'll cover you $34.
Oh, great. Thanks.
All right.
As you're going back, if you could pull up the MOA bucket document, that's where we're going to be next.
Yeah. Let's come back together at 5:45.
5:45 it is. All right.
Okay, Dave, could I suggest that we begin the session with listening to Dorman's new ringtone? No.
I saw that in the chat. Yeah.
Apparently, the recording is a good thing. And when you have statements like Linda saying, I agree with Dorman, you've got to capture that for posterity.
I'm pretty sure she said, I agree with Deborah. That's what I heard.
All right, folks, we are back. So we are on the MOUs. So if you can pull up the MOU bucket. I assume, Dave, since shared decision making is up first, that's the one you want to start with?
It is not.
It's not. All right. I'm glad I asked.
I'll give a little bit of my report just as a reminder. I think we have a 6 o'clock pause because we have a guest coming to help us with our next topic.
Okay.
6 o'clock, we'll need to pause. I'll be stepping off at that time to go to my other thing and back at 7. But we have a guest who's Mila's phone a friend. And that's a scheduled, we have to have that as a scheduled item.
Okay.
So the MOU writing group got together and we have continued to make some pretty good progress. I will tell you that the shared decision-making article is the one we are not done with. And so we'll be asking, depending on if we get to it today or not, we will be asking for your assistance in that space. But we did work on, as we, our group already agreed to the assessment day language, and we did some additional work on the 2 sections in Article 14. So the 2 sections we dealt with were in the induction space and in the Apex committee spaces. And so I think I'll do the induction one first, if that's okay, Mila, is that all right? All right. And then we did, so if you want to find that in our document, it's kind of near the bottom on page 5 of 7. It's labeled Article 14.15. We did some additional work in this case because remember we were talking about like who should we be included, who should we not be included, and so what we tried to do, and in taking in your guys' feedback in that first paragraph there, was we determined that there are state requirements for induction for many of our positions, and so our intent of how we've kind of phrased the highlighted sections were educators, because there are many different categories of educator for which we provide induction services to, who are going through a state required induction program for the position that they held as an educator. It's highlighted there. And we use that phrase because we talked about, well, I'm gone and gotten my principal's license. Should I be doing the induction to convert from professional or from initial to professional? Should the district be required to do that? And we tried to address that with those inclusion of that statement, the position held by the educator. So we did that in that space, and really in just the Article 14.15 space, that was really the only adjustment we made. We converted the words from teacher to educator in the sentences because we determined that educator was the appropriate. Remember, we debated, should it be teacher, should it be educator? So we went through and made sure that educator was listed in all the different categories. because that is the correct term in this particular article, and added that language. Mila or other members of the team, anything else in 14.15 that you would want to highlight?
Dave, is that the things you were just speaking to? Were those the pink highlights? Yeah, that was why they were highlighted.
Yeah, we highlighted them just because those were really the only ads we made. And I highlighted the one educator to remind us that we changed educator in all the different parts, just to remind us that that's what we did. That was the reason for the highlighting. More for my memory than any other reason.
Other input on this? So Dave, help me procedurally with the MOUs here. Are you looking for a thumbs up on those? Yes. Each one individually? Is that the way you're going? All right. Yep. So before we do that, any questions from the body for Dave and the team on 14.15?
Just like last time, if you want to refer, the original language is all the language that's in the induction MOU that's currently in the contract. So if you want to do some flipping or looking back and forth, that would be to compare. That would be what I would look at.
I think I'm going to apologize to the group. There's a little bit of a clerical thing going on. Dave is talking about the article called Induction/Licensure, and it's labeled 14.15. But if you're scrolling too far down, we accidentally have 14.15 Educator Effectiveness Committee. So I'm going to go ahead right now and make that 15 into a 16, because we don't, that if you're confused, I'm just noticing that that's going on. So
apologize about that. I hadn't counted that.
There we go. Mila just made the
looking
change.
At induction and licensure.
Give you a little time to look it over, see if you have any questions. All right, are we ready for thumbs? (14.15) induction/licensure. Where are your thumbs? You have consensus. Good job.
As we let's wait, pause. We should celebrate. We just got consensus. So
that's right. Correct.
Right?
Good job.
Bo, where was your thumb at? I didn't see your thumb, Bo.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I saw it. Yep.
Did Kathy come back in? Do we need Kathy too? Because she was having technical difficulties, but
yeah,
just curious.
I mean, I would allow, I think if Kathy has objection, we can circle back with.
Exactly. That's exactly what we'll do. Sandy, thanks for bringing that to our attention. I didn't notice she wasn't on. So, all right, Dave, continue.
Yep. So down below there, there was a section that we noticed as we were working in Article 14, taking the language around Apex committee and whatnot. And it's actually listed as 14.6 in the language. So we were looking at 14.5 and 14.6 language. And because those 14.4 and 14.5 included conversations about the Apex committee and guide, we recommended, and you'll see it below, that those sections be merged into this statement. We were basically repeating ourselves by talking about it further on in the article and then earlier in the article. And then as we were doing that, we noticed in 14.6 that the dates here are statutory, but every year we update them, but sometimes we miss the years and it creates confusion and whatnot. In fact, even this year we missed it. We forgot to update the dates to the 1920 school year, or it says 1920 school year instead of 2021 school year. And so the committee discussed and was outside of our bounds, so I want to own that. But we don't have to necessarily take a vote on this right now, give people time to think about it. But we wanted to make a recommendation that we strike the year language from the list of the calendar. And then because the May 7th date that's currently listed there is statutory, and it's the 2 weeks, the 14 days before the last duty day. It's a statutory date. That's why that one changes every year, to just replace the date with the phrase no later than 14 days prior to the last day of instruction. And then it would say what it is, complete the end of the conversation and final effectiveness rating. So that's just I want to give people time to think about that one. So I'm not asking for a vote on that one right now. It was more of a formatting thing that I've noticed we've in the past as we've updated years, and because we don't have dates except for the 15th, kind of the middle of all of these, the date except for the last one doesn't change. It's always November 15th. It's always January 31st. We don't change the date. We just change the year.
The year.
Last one.
Okay.
So like I said, not asking right now, Dave. Maybe we'll circle back to that later after giving people a moment to, some time to process, and maybe even
about it
next time we bring the MOA bucket up, because we're not going to get shared decision making today. We're going to be bringing this back time. So perhaps next time we circle back to that section. Mila, would you want to add anything to that before moving on to the committee work?
Nope,
Okay.
You're good.
So if you look at what it is now labeled 14.6 Educator Effectiveness Committee, APEX, we continue to work to combine those different sections, talking about the committee work. You can see the highlighted sections were places where we were pulling from different, the earlier parts of the article into this section. Taking in some of the feedback from our last meeting. And so what I would ask is everybody take a moment and read through, once again, reflecting on what those articles currently say, 14.4, 14.5, and the current MOA, and then read what is there. And then Milo, I'm gonna hand the baton to you to take over the rest of this part here.
Thanks, Dave. Have fun at your other obligation.
Thank you.
Okay, does everybody know where we're at then? On the 14.16, right?
So can I just ask a clarifying question?
You may.
There's no 14.16 in the actual master agreement. So does that means we're adding the proposed thing is to add this one in?
That's right, Sandy.
Okay.
And these numbers may not be right. 15, 16. I have no idea if those are right, but the intention is add that into the end of the existing 14.
So then what does the highlighted stuff mean?
The highlighted stuff is, I believe we had a version in front of you last time that we went back and further refined. And so I believe, and Ian helped me recall, but I believe that our intention was to show you what's different from the last time you saw it, in case you were tracking.
Okay.
I thought it was where we had chopped up Article 14.4.
Yeah, you know what, Allison, now that I was just saying that and I was kind of stumbling on it. You see Article 14.4 highlighted in pink. And I think what we meant to demonstrate is this is where 14.4 lives, so that and Ian's nodding. So thank you.
Okay,
right.
Thanks.
Other discussion on this one? Other questions?
Well, yeah, last time we were kind of talking about where they should live because they're not in the contract, they're MOAs. So last time we were looking at
where it should live. And there was already something that was kind of living there. And at the time, there was the idea that it would be put at the end, but there was already something. So we had to, I mean, I'm not on the committee, but that was the discussion we had last time was, do we get rid of what's already there? Do we merge them? Do we put it some at the end?
Right, you're right, Shelley. And the writing group took a look. We took a look at where 14.4, which really had to talk about, the gist of it was what's the committee, this statutory required committee. And we thought that the flow of this article was improved by talking about the elements of evaluation and the timelines. And then only at the very end, let's talk about the committee. We didn't think it fit in the middle. So our recommendation to you is to delete our 14.4 and to replace that language in the pink areas at the at the end of the article. Jump in, group, if I've not said that quite right.
I'm with you there. Absolutely. We took that language from point 4 and moved it here, so we would consolidate that.
Okay. Questions, comments? Give people time to continue to look it over a little bit.
I recall that there was some requirement in the original language about printing out copies. we eliminated that. You know, the last paragraph just really talks about our work shall be updated regularly, posted on the district website. And that's the current standard. And so that's where we felt like that's what we should commit to the process.
I still see people reading, Mila, so.
Okay. Hey, Jean. Trace Polder, my guest, is trying to log in, and she's tried her phone and 2 computers, can't get in. Any suggestions? I guess I'll send her the phone numbers.
Is she logged in with her district Zoom account?
I wonder. Yeah, could be. Thanks, Allison.
So are we ready for thumbs on this one, Mila, or? I don't see any questions.
Any further questions?
Okay. Everybody understand what you're voting on? All right, let me see your thumbs, folks. I still see a couple people that are vehemently reading, but all right. You have consensus on it.
All right. For all of you who have heard Dave talking trash about how long it takes committees when I'm on them, I just want to call this moment to your attention. But the minute he left, we took care of business.
All right. Are you to? Do you have more? Or are you ready for your person? They can't get in, can they?
She's working. I've sent her the link. She's working on it. Let's we can talk to you a little bit. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the shared decision making, particularly, and Ian and Allison and members of the writing group. I think I'd like to kind of start from the bottom of the shared decision making. You'll note that it's section 5 and section 7. We're recommending to strike those completely as redundant. And so I'd like you to just look at those sections. And maybe just see if you don't agree with our recommendation as a writing group.
And as you're reading, if you have questions, put your hand up. Laura, how did you get your hand down? Do you know? Just disappeared, huh?
Done it for, maybe it timed out. Maybe my virtual hand got tired. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you for taking it off.
That was Jean to the rescue.
Sandy.
On the X.7, whatever, it says to delete that, and it says now that this is in contract language, it seems unnecessary to reiterate. Where is that in the contract then?
Well, that's what we are doing by taking it out of MOA space and putting it into the contract. We don't have a recommendation for you quite yet on exactly where in the contract document, but the whole proposal here is that we move this language into its own article in the contract.
So, but it says deleted. So I guess I'm confused. Are you saying that we're going to?
Yeah. Thanks, Sandy. If you look at the content of that paragraph, it talks about the development and implementation of changes that evolved from shared decision-making will be in accordance with district policy and law. And that we talked about the fact that has to be the case anyway. You can't make up things that break laws or policies.
Oh,
So
okay, I see.
A little redundant. And that the district and the DTA, we respect and recognize the importance of negotiating teams to clarify the master agreement. And we think that matters of interpretation or things that need revision to the master agreement should be referred to IBS negotiation. Well, like all of that is the way we do business. And we agreed that when things are written in an MOA, sometimes there's a lot more said that isn't strictly necessary to reiterate all of those facts of the way we do business in contract language. I don't know if that clarifies, or group, if you have any more to add.
Other questions? Dorman.
So X.5 is being deleted as well, correct?
That's the recommendation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it talks about, but that part's not redundant, right? That talks about training people on problem solving, conflict resolution, trust building, and things like that. And we're not going to do that anymore. Or do we do that already? Or why would we not want to train people on how to do this effectively?
Yeah, good, excellent question. The conversation really centered on the fact that we don't have specific trainings. We may have, when we initially were rolling out shared decision making, done particular trainings on these varied topics so that we could sort of incorporate shared decision making into the way we do business. Many years later, shared decision making is incorporated into the way we do business. And yes, there are certainly professional development sessions that are available on facilitation or group processing or team building or that sort of thing. But we're not currently doing extensive trainings along those lines, as I understand it, in buildings, certainly not as it relates to shared decision making. And it's not saying we wouldn't do them if they were needed, but what happens, Dave describes in paragraph 6, that list of the meet regularly to discuss implementation. If Dave sees that a school is really out of step with what other schools are doing in shared decision making, he'll bring it to the attention, usually of the executive directors, and then they do some troubleshooting to try and get things realigned and more coherent with the way other buildings are implementing shared decision making. So there's already kind of a process in place for troubleshooting, but it really isn't this idea that will conduct these trainings, and because we aren't conducting these trainings in any regular fashion. Group, do you want to add? What else did you recall from that conversation?
That's what I remember, is that we had very similar to that exact conversation. And I think I asked that question, and then I was like, no, I never have actually been trained on it. But that would still provide that catch by district and DTEA meeting to discuss the building level implementation, so that if it wasn't happening, it still has that catch, but like not that everyone's getting trained on it.
Other questions, comments? Allison, I did see your hand come up. Was that what you wanted to say, or okay? Linda.
I think Miley is correct when she says that when this language was written was when we did the training. And I think probably, I can't even remember the last time a training was done, but when this was done, it was such a new concept that we felt like we had to be very specific in the MOA so people understood. So I don't have a problem with not including that portion.
I hope that Darman got that recorded too, Linda, because I heard you say I think Mila was correct. Can you set me up with my ringtone next, Darman? Totally teasing you, Linda.
That's what I get for being agreeable.
Other discussion on this. So Mila, this one is not ready for thumbs yet.
It's not ready, okay. But in the spirit of trying to give you some ideas to percolate on, and hopefully be able to finalize it at our next meeting. What you see represented in paragraph 6 really is, Dave indicates that describes pretty accurately his current practice. And like I was saying, whenever there's a little bit of a rough spot or a little inconsistency, the district and the DTA meet regularly, and they discuss the building level implementation, and they include but not limit to those topics that are listed there. So our recommendation is not to change that paragraph, but to strike the other two. And then going up, the group has, I think we wanted, yeah, we're going to come back with some recommendations here. We've struggled a little bit with the third paragraph, the areas where the educators shall be given opportunities to provide input, shall include but not be limited to. And at our last meeting, we talked about how, for example, curriculum, there's district policy that sets like an inclusive process with input for selecting district-wide curriculum. We did insert the word building level curriculum because as we talked, it seemed that there were some variances in, there is a policy that very clearly gives teachers voice in selecting curriculum at a district level, and buildings aren't necessarily selecting, they are not selecting all of their own curriculum or materials. There's a district-wide process for that. So we didn't want to imply that this should usurp the district policy, but we did recognize that there were some cases where there might be some choices at a building level, and SDM would be the appropriate method to use to have some input. So we're trying to firm up and play with language that really says what we mean in that space. Any group input on that paragraph?
Bo.
Within that same policy, Mila, it does actually spell out what's to be done at the school level when they contemplate bringing in instructional materials that would be part of core instruction. So even at that level, there is some policy language around how to initiate that at the building level. And then there's some nuance in here in that policy around core versus supplemental, but even at the building level, that is spelled out under 6230 what that process looks like, and it involves parents and other stakeholders as well.
Allison.
So Bo, I guess maybe you can answer this then. So one example that I came up with from Horizon is that a teacher came up with the idea for a new class called World Issues. And they're going, I believe, through a shared decision-making process of choosing a book for that class, which to my knowledge doesn't exist at another high school. And so that's where I thought that something like this fit. So I guess, I don't know.
So Allison, probably a multi-step process there. First of all, there's a separate policy around starting a new course and a proposal for doing that. And within the new course policy is going through this process of materials selection. So a school could have a shared decision-making as kind of a precursor to what they bring forward for official adoption through a building level policy. But anything that we use for core instruction for students does have to go through a pretty specific building level policy. And then eventually all building level adoptions go up to the district level, and we put them through a district process where they end up on an approved list. But all of the instructional materials that we utilize, they do have to follow a pretty specific process, starting at the building level, and then there's a district level place to do that. So course proposals would fall under district policy 6200, and instructional materials and the details related to that are 6230. So again, as you guys noodle on this language, looking at those two policies will be really important so that we don't have conflicting messages.
Thanks, Bo. We will absolutely do that as we circle back. You will note that we added the word discretionary into number 1, discretionary funds, because this wasn't to imply that you had to go through a shared decision-making process for the entire. Many things are just not school choice. They're mandated by funding formulas.
Marty.
I just think we may need to define what discretionary means.
What layman's term would you use for that? What would you suggest to the committee?
I don't know, but I mean, like, we're in budget season now. We're all having to decide, like, we have to make decisions about staffing. Like, is this going to go to staffing? Is this going to go to department budgets? Is this going to, I think there's a process already that determines like how leadership funds would be distributed using the shared decision-making model. But I don't believe that it would be possible to meet the timelines involved and do a shared decision-making model in determining, say, like operating budgets or how much money we should allocate to copies or,
Yeah, right.
Allison, your hand's still up. Did you have more? Okay.
Okay, so I'm just adding some notes for the committee on the side there. I don't believe in paragraph 2, I don't believe we've got much that is different from the original language. I think paragraph 1 is significantly rewritten, and we just threw away the old language and we described what it is, our common working definition right now. So we just simplified it. Shared decision-making is an opportunity for all stakeholders to have input on the decisions that impact their learning and working environment. So we liked just the simplification and the brevity of that statement. I guess what I'd like, Dave, is any thoughts for the writing committee to ponder? You know, if any of you have any suggestions, if you have any ideas that you think we should incorporate, anything you're seeing right here that you're like, well, that's not going to cut it. It'd be helpful for us to hear that.
Marty.
I'm wondering if the line about elementary planning time is necessary since we have new language around elementary planning time or planning time in general. Like,
Kristen, I'd ask you and like Heather Espinosa to weigh in on this, but I think it probably is still necessary, Marty, because I think what we have is the morning times and then the during the day times. And I do think some input into which is used for what, which are the common, and Shelley, also, I'm looking at you, you know, I think that despite our new language, I do believe there's still some shared decision-making space at elementary. Am I correct on that?
so more around the scheduling of that time or the use
It's
of
like which times a day are used for which types of meetings. Is that accurate? Oh, my elementary friends. Heather's nodding her head.
more around scheduling then, right? Because we've got language about what the time's used for.
So maybe scheduling might be a suggested word. Okay.
Okay. Dorman.
So as the community goes forward, I believe that the more that stakeholders involved in decision making and the more that the professionals and the people involved or affected by the decisions are involved, the better the decision is going to be. And so I get a little anxious when everything is like it's being, the scope of shared decision making in our conversations is being shrunk, is what it feels like. It may not be true. So just as the committee writes, let's make sure, for me, I want to keep as many stakeholders, keep as much decisions available for everybody to be involved in. Okay, because now it's just discretionary funds, and then we're not going to do, then we're going to get rid of the elementary planning time. And then maybe not that we're going to, we're just discussing it, right? It's not, I'm just telling you, it's giving my heart palpitations. That's all.
Marty, do you have more? Your hand's still up, sir?
I just don't want to open things up to shared decision-making if they're instructed by contract language to be done a certain way already. I think we get into trouble when we have more than one set of expectations for how something is supposed to get accomplished. That's all, Dorman.
Other suggestions for the committee? Linda.
What I really like is some time to sit down where I don't feel rushed and compare the original MOA to the document that the writing team has introduced, and then find a way, if I have a question or if I have a comment, to somehow get it to a member of the writing team rather than waiting until the next time we meet. So I don't know if that's something that's possible, but as part of the original authors of this particular piece of language, I really would like to have some time. And it was written many, many years ago. And so obviously there are things that have changed over time that necessarily haven't been addressed in this language. I think this is one we just kept kind of over the years, just rubber stamped. So from my perspective, if there's a way that I can do that, I would appreciate it.
I think any of us would welcome that sort of analysis and suggestion, Linda. Allison, the writing team is Allison, Teresa, Dave, Kristen, Ian, and me. So any one of us or all of us, those names are listed at the bottom of the MOA bucket document. And I would give any of you the same invitation. If upon reflection, you have something else that feels like, oh yeah, please send it to us. We're gonna meet again. I think we've got a meeting in, I may not have set the next meeting. So anyway, do it within the next week and you'll be sure to beat us to our next meeting. Thank you.
I've got Allison and then Ian.
I guess I'm a little bit feeling like there's this policy in the master agreement, or that we're trying to add to the master agreement instead of having it be an MOA and then district policy. And so I'm wondering if there is someone on the team who has a really thorough understanding of these district policies, or if we should invite Bo. I know you'd love to join us. Because I feel like that would just be beneficial as we're working through this before we bring it back to the group again.
I think that's a good idea. Maybe we'll patch Bo in for a bit of time to work on language on that paragraph.
I'd be happy to do it. And to Linda's point, both of these policies are fairly recent for us as a district and certainly came long after the original creation of the SDM language.
Okay, I have Ian, and then I think that Trace is now on. So Ian, go ahead.
Yes, yeah.
I know we're certainly on a timeline, but this was tasked directly to the writing group. This didn't come through straw design, so we didn't really have that opportunity to all sit and look at the current language. And to Allison's point, bringing in experts in the room on these specific policies and our difference of opinions, I think it would benefit from straw design before heading back to the writing group. However, again, I know we are on a timeline moving towards the end of the year here. If we do have space and time for that, and if that's a better avenue for our contributions or everyone's contributions to this, I would like to make that proposal.
So Mila, are you looking at this one to be ready for the next session? Is that the plan, or at least trying to get it closer by then?
Yeah, ideally it would be at the next session, which is I think on the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. So ideally the writing group would meet again between now and then. And yeah, to Ian's point, having had the chance to hear some input would be fine. But if we just even brought you back our slight refinements and our suggestions, and you had a chance to do a more side-by-side comparison and had something further for us, there's no reason it can't be looked at and then looked at again. But I think I'll aim to convene that, and Dave and I'll aim to convene that MOA writing group before the 22nd. We'll bring you our progress and see how close we are.
All right. Okay, so what is next?
Okay, so hey, Trace Polder, welcome to the meeting. That was quite a 15-20 minute half-hour ordeal. But you persisted with the help of Jean from IT. Thanks, Jean. And welcome, Trace. Trace is our benefits manager on the human resources team. And she really is the expert on all things having to do with leave and laws regarding leave and all sorts of benefits. And so I've asked her to be here with me tonight as half my brain, but I want to share some information with you all, and I'll share my understanding of it. But I knew that if you got into asking any really detailed questions, I might need Trace. So thank you for being here with us tonight. And I want to direct you all to our shared drive. And Trace, I did just share this document with you, so if you want to pull it up. In our shared drive, there's this document called Leave Related Articles, and it's got today's date on it. So join me there if you can. I'm not seeing you get there very fast. Are you finding it? Okay.
Is anybody having trouble finding it?
Okay, so the interest I have tonight in bringing you these there are 5 different parts of the master agreement. So this is a big like hunk of stuff. And what Dave and I had talked about and what I thought I would do is walk you through all of them. There are 5 pieces of language that live in Articles 22 or 24. They have to do with leave. So there's a theme here. And I'd like to just sort of walk through all of them and then ask you how best to handle any follow-up. What should the course of action be? I don't come presuming one thing or another should happen. I have some interests, which I will share with you. And then what I would propose is to walk through all of them, to answer questions, to allow you to get clarification about why is it this way? Why do you think that? And Trace and I will attempt to answer that together. And then one by one, I would, Dave, ask you and Jim to help us think about, so what do we want to do with that? How would we best address the interest that's being described? So I hope you can hang with me for a little bit here as I walk through these 5 separate things, and then you could, we can decide as a team what we think ought to be the next steps. Does that make sense? So the first article that I bring to your attention is 22.1. The master agreement language is copied there for you. And this is having to do with the allocation of temporary leave. And it says that each full-time teacher shall be granted 11 days of temp leave per year at the beginning of the school year. Days shall be provided on a pro rata basis determined by the start date if it is after the beginning of the school year. So that's pretty clear. When people start late, they get a prorated amount of temp leave time. My interest in bringing this issue before the group is to more clearly reflect what happens to this temp leave accrual when a partial year of extended unpaid leave is happening. So, for example, what goes on is somebody is on and this is an unpaid leave of absence. So let's say like parental leave, or that's a very commonly occurring situation, parental leave. And so what happens when they come in, let's say that they start the year late. So just like a late arriving employee, that's fine. Their days are prorated. That's pretty easy. The language reflects that. But and when somebody's on parental leave for an entire year, an unpaid leave for an entire year, they accrue no temp leave. And so what our payroll team has always done, and our benefits team, is try to treat everybody equally and fairly. And so if when you're out on an unpaid leave, you don't accrue any leave, or when you start late, you only accrue a prorated amount of leave, they take that philosophy and they apply it to a couple of other situations that aren't so clearly defined here. And those are, let me give you the example of the person who starts the year and they're working, and on the first day of your contract year, you get all 11 days dumped into your accrual. And what happens if you leave, let's say that you need to leave halfway through the year, what the payroll team does then is they say, okay, we are going to take half of the accrual, 5.5 days, half of 11, and we're going to remove that from your temp leave accrual. And if you don't have enough days there, you do end up getting docked. But that's because you're leaving. You're going to be out on an unpaid leave. And so, but that doesn't say that here, really, strictly speaking. But that's how it is applied currently. The other thing that happens sometimes is somebody starts the year, well, or they're out at the begin, they start the year, they have to go out at the halfway point. So 5.5 days are removed from their accrual. They're gone for a couple of months and then they come back. And so then we've taken 5.5 days away from them. So then the payroll team looks to see, okay, we only have 1 month left. So we'll do, you know, a little fraction of the days and restore them to you. But there's been some, there have been some cases where people were concerned or confused because the language says you'll get 11 days per year, and only if you start late is there a pro rata. So Trace, would you add anything to that? I feel like I kind of stumbled around a little bit with that explanation. Is there a different example or another way you could explain that?
I thought that was good, but I do it every day. So I know what you're saying.
Right. So let me pause if anybody has questions about like the practice and what the language says.
Questions? Allison.
I feel like my first question is just like, how often is this situation coming up? So we're not bargaining language for just like 1 or 2 people. And like, are there some like typical situations that this tends to happen for? Because I want to believe it's not just people who come and then use all their days and quit their job. Like something's going on. Right. So I just like a little more info.
I think that the most frequent occurrence of this is parental leave, the unpaid parental leave. And we have a ton of that. Trace, is that accurate? Yeah.
That's accurate. And then the unpaid personal leave of absences for all the certified staff who didn't work first semester.
Other questions?
And Allison, I would say there are several hundred of those unpaid parental leaves. Well, I don't know if there are several hundred parental leaves. They're maternity leaves, but the extended parental leaves, dozens and dozens every year, I think is fair to say.
Heather.
To help me understand more. So if a person goes out on maternity leave for 6 weeks, you take, I know we already have to give time, right, to go out on maternity leave. So then you take more time and then they come back after that 6 weeks and you give it back?
So I do want to draw your attention to the word unpaid leave. Okay. So if you're in sick leave bank, or if you're using your stockpile of temp leave days, this does not apply. This is only when you've exhausted your temp leave and or you're on one of those leaves of absence that by design is unpaid.
Okay.
Or you were on a leave and it started as paid because you had temp leave and you were getting paid and but then your illness is lasting a long time and you switch into an unpaid status. And so at that point, when we get to over 30 days of unpaid, then we switch into this activity of prorating, of messing with the temp leave accrual.
I guess my next question is, do we have to mess with it?
Yeah, well, so that kind of goes back to our desire always to treat people consistently. And so when we have people who are on a full year of an unpaid leave, like leave for other employment or parental leave for a whole year, they don't accrue temporary leave. And so our practice has been that if you're out and you're not getting paid, you don't accrue leave. So treating people who if we didn't mess with it, I think what you're saying is give people their 11 and let them keep their 11 no matter what happens during the year. And that certainly is an option, but it isn't treating people equally. And that's where our practice has come from, but that's not exactly what this language says.
Laura Leppy.
You kind of answered my question, I think, Mila. You said it was the 30 days. So like if someone were on parental leave using their like 6 weeks, they took all, like kind of what Heather was saying, all their leave disappears. They take their 6 weeks, but it's like 2 weeks before spring break or whatever. So they want to take those 2 weeks so that then they get the spring break. That wouldn't count for this because it's not more than 30 days. That would just be unpaid 2 weeks of leave and they wouldn't lose more temp time on top of that. Correct?
That's correct, Laura. Yep. Yep. It's when you tip into that greater than 30 days of unpaid.
Thank you. And then will someone put my hand down so it doesn't get touched?
Oh.
I don't have the ability and it's not in my reactions. It's
I'll just keep calling on you over and over.
perfect.
Laura.
I'll just keep saying things. Got to.
All right. Other questions for Mila or Trace?
Okay, so we don't have to decide anything. I just want to make sure that you understand sort of what the interest is and why things are happening the way they're happening. Good with that one?
Looks like it. I don't see any other questions, Mila.
Okay, so I'm going to roll to the next one, which is Article 22.6. And I'm just going in numerical order, so it feels like we're just sort of jumping around, and we are. This is some new language. For the last several years, in the inclement weather closure document in our practice when we had snow days, you may recall, was to, if you had previously arranged a temp leave day or a vacation day and a snow day happened, we didn't give you back your time. You remember that? And we decided to change that practice. And so we put some language into the master agreement that said temporary leave time previously arranged will not be deducted in the event of a delayed start or closure due to inclement weather or other circumstances resulting in closure. This does not apply to approved unpaid leaves of absence. Well, my interest is to accurately reflect our intention. And what I recall from our conversation was that when you're on a leave of absence, we didn't intend that in the middle of your leave of absence, there's a snow day and that you should get a day back. You know, that we would add a day on to your sick leave bank or that we would add a day to your leave time just because there happened to be a snow day in the middle of your extended leave. That was the intention as I recall it. And what a little word got in here by mistake, I believe, and that's the word unpaid. I don't think it really matters. Our intention, as I recall it, and I believe as Dave recalls it too, I'm not making things up for him, but we felt like any extended leave of absence, this was, you know, we're not going to give you back a day just because there was a snow day in the middle of the extended. We wanted to solve for the problem of teachers who are like, well, I'm not going to put a sub in and, you know, until the last minute, or, you know, that left a bad taste in the mouth for those singleton kinds of absences that came up at the time of a snow day. But we really thought that someone on an FMLA leave, someone in sick leave bank, we didn't mean to prolong their extended leave. And it doesn't matter whether you're paid, like in sick leave bank, or you're unpaid, like on a year-long parental leave of absence. What, we're going to give you back a day, you know, because there was a snow day during your year. So anyway, that's the interest, is to accurately reflect that original intention and remove the word unpaid. In this case, I kind of do have an option. It's pretty straightforward.
Questions, comments?
Matt's ready to go.
And Matt's already got his thumbs up on the option. Deborah.
So how would this affect someone who is on maternity leave? That's paid. So my understanding right now by this language is they would get their day back. Are we looking to change that?
So if you're on a paid leave, like a paid maternity leave, our intention, as I recall it, was that if there happens to be a snow day in the middle of your maternity leave, you delivered the baby on a certain date, you have a 6-week period of incapacity before we're planning to come back. We would not intend that a snow day would make that become 6 days plus 1. Your time away to heal from your delivery is 6 weeks. The arrival of a snowstorm should not make it 6 weeks in 1 day. So what we intended was any extended leave. It doesn't matter whether it's a paid or an unpaid, that snow doesn't change your medical, your healing, your reason for being gone on leave. And it shouldn't automatically extend a extended leave of absence.
Allison?
So I feel like I vaguely remember, but I might be wrong, that if you have more than 30 days, anything over 30, you get to keep. Is that correct? If you go out on maternity leave, sick leave bank?
The qualifying for sick leave bank, yeah, you have to pay in at least 10 days and up to 30, but if you have more time than that, you keep it, yeah.
So, 30 days is 6 weeks. So I feel like if they take 30 of your days, then you should get one back for a snow day. Just throwing that out there, because you've essentially used all of your time for, like, you've given a day for every day that you were out on maternity leave.
Right. Well, and
but
so
in all other cases, I see where you're coming from, and like the unpaid, I do remember that was not part of that, but
So it could be that the recommendation on this one might be to come back and renegotiate it, go through the process. It could be that you may decide we don't need to, as a group, you don't need to recommend that. So yeah. It may not be as simple as just striking unpaid if there's some conversation or negotiation to be done about that.
Yep. Other questions, comments on this one?
Okay, I'm going to roll to the next one to describe it for you. This is Article 24.2, parental leave. And this one has to do, so this has happened to Allison's favorite question exactly once lately in Dave's and my tenure in the office. But it's a confusing once. And I think sometimes I agree with you. When the problem is not pervasive, it's kind of like, why are we going to change a bunch of stuff for that? But, as Dave and I noodled through this on behalf of one of the members, we realized we just have this essential sort of, we have what we interpret as a legal requirement. And the language of the contract doesn't say that, and it sets us up for a conflict. And so if we can correct it, even though it doesn't happen super frequently in this particular case, we should make effort to align what we believe is required of us legally and what the agreement says. So I will describe the situation here. Parental leave is granted for the purpose of child care or adoption, must commence within 60 calendar days of the birth, pre-adoption placement, adoption, or guardianship of the child. The leave will be granted to either parent. If both parents are employed, they elect one or the other. So what happened in the case that we're talking about here is we had an employee who wanted to take parental leave, but they did not want to take their FMLA leave. This happened to be a female who would have, for delivering the child, would have needed to take the the FMLA leave. And she really didn't want to take the FMLA leave. She just wanted to jump right into the parental leave. And we have not ever encountered anybody who didn't want to take their federally entitled FMLA leave. And we were saying, no, you have to take the FMLA leave. And, Dave and I talked quite a bit about, well, that's not what it says. It actually doesn't say you have to take the FMLA leave. So I will try to explain, and I'll lean on Trace a bit here too. I've pulled a couple of references for you that you could look at later if you wanted. Fact sheet 28 is linked here. This is a publication of the, I believe it's the Department of Labor. It's a government publication. I lifted one paragraph out of the very bottom of it. That fact sheet is kind of a 2 or 3 pager that just describes the FMLA, how you are eligible. And the paragraph about, just to employers, it's unlawful for us to interfere with the exercise of an employee's right to have FMLA covered leave. We can't discharge or discriminate against anybody who chooses to take FMLA leave, who does take it. And then there's also an employer's guide to the FMLA that I linked there that talks about the employer's right and ability to require that people use their own personal leave during their FMLA leave. If you have an accrual of leave, you use your own personal leave. So, we're required by federal law to comply with the FMLA provisions and to do it consistently and to do it without discrimination. And so we should not allow employees to opt out of this federally protected and mandated leave. And we don't, and we don't interfere with people's ability to take that. And as an employer, the business case for this practice is really, it's in our best interest. It's in your best interest. It's in all of our best interest to have your colleagues working as much as their health allows them to work. And if we allow people to waive their FMLA leave, what that does is allow them to greatly extend potentially the time that they would be off away from their students or away from their job responsibilities. You would perhaps find yourself in a situation of using your temp leave time and perhaps using sick leave bank time, and then raising your hand later and saying, oh, and I need 12 weeks of federally protected FMLA time. And we wouldn't be able to deny that. We have to give the FMLA time. And this could allow just the piggybacking of time away. And you see in the Employee's Guide to FMLA statement that I put there that we require employees, if they're going to take their 12 weeks of FMLA, we don't interfere with that. We want them to, but they have to take their temp leave time if they have it concurrently, so that they're using up. And this is the way employers do this, and this is how the law is designed, so that you're using your time and you're getting paid while you're in this protected 12-week status. If we allow you to use all your temp leave time and you still have this 12-week protected status, that's a lot more time away from work potentially. And it's just, so that's a little bit of the business case for why we wouldn't want to do that. It's a little confusing. Like I said, it's a rare situation that someone would say, I don't want to take my protected 12 weeks, but it happened, and it happened. And this is the only article where this would really apply to. It's parental leave. FMLA for the delivery of a child would kick in. And so, what we want to be sure that people take their federally federal entitlement to this protected leave, this FMLA. Trace, would you add or clarify anything there? What did I miss?
No, I think that was good. Let's see what if anyone has.
What the questions are.
Yeah, Allison has a question. Allison.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused. So so it's that somebody didn't want to take their maternity leave, like use sick leave bank, they just wanted to jump straight to FMLA?
They didn't want to take their FMLA. They wanted to just go straight on to this parental leave, this unpaid parental leave. And instead of taking FMLA for the delivery of the child, just waive the FMLA and go straight into this unpaid parental leave.
Because FMLA would require them to do the sick leave bank.
Not the sick leave bank, but it would require them to use their temp leave time.
Oh, I see. They were just trying to keep all their temp leave time.
Yeah, and go on to an unpaid status.
Sorry, I was just not getting. I'm better now.
Yeah.
Other questions? Other questions?
So the interest here really is to just be sure that people are taking their entitled FMLA leave before accessing parental leave.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, Mila, so.
Okay. Yeah, have I put you to sleep yet? Do we need to get up for a brain break?
I wondered if are you ready to take a short break real quick? Dorman's got a question first. Go ahead.
Okay, there's my mic. Okay. So does federal law require a person to take their FMLA before their parental non-medical leave, or is that what we want or what we are thinking about?
Well, most employers don't have a parental leave that's anywhere near as generous as ours or set up like ours. So the law would be silent on like the order of operations, but the law is not silent on the right of employees to take the leave and the obligation of employers to administer this leave in a consistent way. Trace, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. So everyone also needs to remember that FMLA has more reasons than just baby bonding and parental. And baby bonding and parental actually fall under the FMLA. So a husband can take his 12 weeks of FMLA for baby bonding parental. That's one of the reasons. So if we can't choose reasons that we're going to apply FMLA to or not. So someone's employee's serious health condition, they could choose not to have FMLA. And this is at a higher level than this is all employees. This is classified, this is administrative, certified, and this is any of our subs who work.
Laura.
You just made me think of something. So kind of on Allison's point, they have to take their temp time first, right? And if they have all the temp time for the 6 weeks and they decide not to extend it, then mom giving birth takes 30 days of temp time, correct?
To qualify for the sick leave bank, you can be charged up to 30 days of temp time. Mm-hmm.
Okay, how does that work for the partner taking parental leave? Did they have to take their 30 days from the sick leave bank as well? Or did they take FMLA unpaid right away without losing any of their temp days if they worked in our district as well?
We require all employees, certified admin and classified, to use available time off that runs concurrently with FMLA leave.
So if they take 12 weeks of FMLA, in theory, they're getting paid for 6 of it, and then 6 of it's unpaid. Is that correct? And if they have 12 weeks of accrued leave, right? Like they have the 60 days because they have 70 days of temp time accrued, then 60 of their 70 days would disappear, but they would get paid for all of it?
Correct.
Yeah. Laura, if you've accrued 40, you're the dad and you've accrued 40 days, 40 out of 60 will be paid. And you can either come back after 40 or you can have another couple of weeks protected leave unpaid. If you've got 70 hours accrued, you can use 60 of it in these 12 protected weeks and still have a little bit in the bank.
Okay, there's no way to not lose the accrued leave for any time in which you are gone, no matter what you do, correct?
You need to use the accrued leave. That's what it's for. Mhm.
Allison.
I'm just trying to get in the headspace of understanding why somebody might want to do this.
Mine is not to question why. As David, as you heard Dave say, you know, it's the language doesn't prohibit it, you know, and so that was, you know, he was having to argue that the master agreement doesn't say you can't. And Trace and I were like, but
Oh, Mila froze on us.
Yeah.
And I'll jump in since she froze until she, this is the first employee in my 3.5 years that everybody wants to keep their paychecks. Most people can't even afford to take the dock and pay and return after
that's not
a week or two of unpaid.
Mila,
Okay.
you froze on us, so we missed what you had. Marty, your hand's up.
Oh, sorry. No, I still have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Allison.
So I guess I'm just like wondering if it's like a scenario where there's like 12 days left of school and you just had a kid and you have 11 days of leave and you don't actually get your full 12 weeks of anything. You don't even get, like, you've literally just got 12 days off at the end of the school year. You had 11 days and we'd take them all. Like, that's all I can envision, which I know probably not something we do a lot about, but that seems horribly unfair. And so I'm wondering if that's just like this person trying to get around that.
No, so the Department of Labor says on non-contract, non-work days, we cannot charge FMLA. So that person gets to take their 11 days in May, and then they can take the rest of the 12 weeks in August.
Okay, see, learned something. Thank you.
And Mila, what we were saying to you is you froze, so we didn't catch what you were saying. So Trace stepped
she jumped
in,
in and did just fine. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, I could hear the audio was going. So yeah, thank you.
Marty.
I was just gonna say I've had this exact discussion with an employee, and I think like in the end, it all washes out to be the same. But the motivation was that, like, they had budgeted to miss a paycheck this year, but didn't want to wipe out all of their days because they knew they had doctor's appointments and other things coming up and other things at a later date. So it was more future planning, way more future planning than I would do. Right? Like, it was around that kind of thinking. Somebody had apparently saved enough money to take 12 weeks off, and then like wanted to make sure they had days to cover anything that happened in the following years or months.
And now we have language for that to allow the borrowing or buying of some extra days.
Other questions, conversation around this? The only hand I see up is Laura's, and so I don't think you've got any other questions.
We're not calling on Laura. Okay.
And we're not calling on Laura anymore.
I'm never allowed to speak again. I'm out. My mute
All
button.
right.
All right. Continue
and
on.
Dave's back. So, all right. So the fourth one is Article 24.3. It is part of FMLA language that's in our contract. And hi, Dave. Welcome back. We're on this document called Leave Related Articles, and we're on the 24.3 toward the bottom. So this language that's present from the master agreement defines like when you're eligible to take this 12 weeks of protected leave. And it reads that a teacher has been employed by the district for at least 1 year and who's worked a minimum of 1,250 hours over the previous 12 months shall be entitled to take leave totaling 12 work weeks in any 12-month period following the first instance of use once eligibility has been established for purposes described in the Family Medical Leave Act. Well, I've given you a fact sheet link there, and I've brought forward some of the pertinent language there in italics. The employer is actually allowed to choose which of 4 approaches they want to use for determining the 12-month eligibility period. And so you see them described there. There's a calendar year. Let's just say that every 12 months defined by January through December. You could do that as an employer. Or you could say any fixed 12 months. So like in our case, we could say August 1st through July 30th, you know, more closely reflect our contract year. And that would be a fixed amount of time. That's always the 12-month period. The third option is a 12-month period measured forward from the first date an employee ever took FMLA leave. Those first three options are all fixed. So once you establish the 12-month period, that's what it is forevermore for the rest of your employment with us. The fourth option is called a rolling 12-month period measured backward. And Dave, are you?
I did. Sorry, I forgot that that I wasn't a host, so I could put that hand raise feature on. So
go
I
ahead.
just had a question. If you could give an example of what fix would look like.
Yeah. Well, right. I will. Thank you. So the fourth one, this rolling 12-month measured backward, as the name implies, it's rolling. It varies. It's flexible depending on when the usage of FMLA happens. And so I'm going to attempt to explain it, but I know I'm going to need Trace for this one. So the rolling 12-month look back is the one that is most commonly used by employers all over because it's actually, it favors the employee. It can favor the employee to some extent. It also makes more sense from a business case, like I was describing in one of the earlier conversations. So when you've got a fixed period of time, any of those first three examples, well, the first two examples where it's, let's just say it was a calendar year, you could have someone who is eligible in the year 2019 and they take their 12 weeks right toward the end of the year. And it ends December 31st. They're 12 weeks in December 31st. And then, oops, January 1st, here's a new calendar year, another 12 weeks. And you could have employees out for 24 consecutive protected weeks. And that's not businesses don't choose that, either the first two very often, because that's not a great setup. If people are needing the coverage, they need the coverage. But if you have some options as to when and how to make people eligible, that's not the appealing one for businesses. The third one, the 12-month period measured forward, as I understand it, and Trace, you jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's measured from the first date an employee takes a leave. So in the example that I gave you, that's actually given in the government publication, Lucia begins a leave on November 6th of 2012. So her 12-month period is November 6th, 2012 through November 5th of the following year, 2013. And then from then on, that's Lucia's year. And this causes some trouble with looking back over time and record keeping. We're only required to keep records for 3 years and on employees in this space. And so we may have somebody who had their leave years and years ago, and this really comes into play in intermittent leaves. So an intermittent leave, when you don't need to be gone for 12 weeks in a row, but you're going to use those 60 days intermittently over time. And if you don't use very many a year and it's all covered under the same condition, it gets to be a bookkeeping nightmare for employers to remember, what's your year, what's your look back period, or not your eligibility period. And we may have discarded records by the time you finish using an intermittent leave, or most employers don't choose this one either. Trace, would you add anything on that one? Did I misspeak?
No, you didn't misspeak. That one's really hard because basically as long as someone is employed for you, you have to keep. So, and talking about these long term 20, 30-year employees, you're having to keep FMLA paperwork on all of these employees for, and then the 3 years after they leave employment. So, I mean, the cabinet space and IT alone is really difficult, which is why people generally don't do that one.
So the vast majority of employers in public sector as well as private do choose this rolling look back. And so let's try and give an example of what that looks like. So employees who, Trace, can you explain a rolling look back? I could try, but I think you'll do it better.
Sure, I'll use the 2012 example. So there are 12 weeks from August, at the end of August 2012 and runs it through about November 2012. They've taken their 12 weeks. Come November, or let's do October of 2013, the 1st of October, they need another leave. The look back period is 12 months previous. So we're chopping the time they took in August or September, so 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it would be. And so in October, they're actually eligible to start taking FMLA leave again, instead of a fixed period, which would mean they could not take FMLA leave again under those other methods until November of 2013. So it's actually a little bit more generous to the employee. And then for our inter leaves, because there may be years, time periods where they need a little less or a little more, we're always chopping last month off and moving into the next to do their time, basically, if that kind of makes sense.
So I don't know that I want you to try to understand the differences between what employers can choose, but I guess I'd like to say that the vast majority of employers choose choice 4, the rolling period measured backward. This is the measurement tool we've always chosen as a district. And so what the contract language says isn't actually true. I'm not suggesting that we change anything in our practice. Anybody who's gotten FMLA for this district has had it using a rolling 12-month measured backwards. That's not a change. It's just that our language that says in any 12-month period is not accurate. It should use the language of any rolling 12-month period measured backward. So my interest is in correcting that language to reflect our current practice. So I don't know if you have any more questions. I don't know if you want to seek to understand that at any deeper level. It's hard.
Any questions or discussion on this one?
And Dave, just to catch you up a little bit, I had prefaced this whole series of 5 articles with the statement that I was going to try to explain them, and then we could come back and decide how we wanted to tackle. So, you know, what the next step would appear to be. So last one, 5th one, thanks for hanging with. This is the 24.4 leave of absence for other employment. And the interest here is similar to an interest we discussed earlier in this year's negotiations in minimizing disruption that's caused by late vacancies. So currently the language you see there has absolutely no mention of when an application for leave for other employment shall be submitted. And so it sometimes happens that people will submit a request for leave for other employment late in the summer or even days before school starting. And there's nothing in the language that would allow me, as long as these conditions are met, that they've worked for 6 years, there'd be no way to deny it. And it causes a lot of disruption, as we've talked about before, to have a late breaking vacancy. So I have an interest in minimizing that disruption in some form or fashion.
Allison.
Do you know what I'm going to ask, Mila?
Mm-hmm. How big a problem is this? Yeah. Trace, I didn't ask you to prepare this, but off the top of your head, approximately how many leaves for other employment do you think we have in a year?
We get normally 10 to 12. This last year was a little bit more, obviously, because they used it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for some other reasons. Yeah, 10 to 12, and not all of those come in late, Allison. But I think if any one of you has ever had a teammate who took a district approved leave of absence at the last minute and you were left somehow holding the bag, so to speak, you probably would appreciate that some attention might be appropriate on this issue.
Dave.
I'm going to answer the question slightly differently than Mila did. So my answer is less about, we can, I think that's if we decide to take up this article as a group on how to deal with it, we can discuss like what a solution could be and defining things and that kind of stuff. But I think all of us, I know I have, both as a teacher and in this seat, have watched. We know when there was a disruptive one, and we know the causes of them, the people, and so it's less to me about the number of late ones, but how disruptive they are when they do come in the day after teacher report, the first week of school. That there's similar to like we were talking about with the late transfers and reassignments language. It's like a lot of times it works out really well, but those times when it didn't work, those are the times create a lot of disruption. So,
other discussion, questions?
So I think if you don't have any more questions requiring big benefit brains, I'm going to let Trace get on with her evening and express my sincere gratitude for her service as a lifeline and her service all along. When you think about people freaking out over COVID and COVID leave and all of that, hundreds and hundreds of calls, hundreds and hundreds of hours to the benefits office. And so I just really appreciate that. This whole year has been a unique kind of nightmare for that team. So anyway, thank you, Trace. Get out of here. Have a good night.
Thanks, Trace. All right, so your discussion now is going to be centered around how do you want to tackle this? Is that correct, Mila?
Yeah, I think so. And at the top of the document, I mean, a couple of thoughts I had were, should we, might you need to say, this is going to take a full process. This is going to take some more story and some options and some some straw design. So, or is this something where it's like, yeah, that seems like that should just be done. Let's send it to a writing group. I mean, those are a couple of options I thought, could be responses to these, or others, certainly. I suppose you could tell me we don't see it as a problem and leave it as is, which is always another option, I suppose. But
so you're asking input from the group on this, correct, Mila?
Yeah, and I think Dave, unless you have a different procedural sort of thought about it, I think we'd maybe just go back one at a time and say, do this, do this, do this, do this.
And let me ask you the $64 question for Jim and I is this something that you want accomplished this year, or is this something that some things can happen now, some can be kicked down the road, et cetera, et cetera?
I think that the goal would be to accomplish these this year to the largest extent possible. If we get to a point where it's like, we're not going to do that, then so be it, or we're not going to be able to get it done. I think Dave and I have talked about a number of topics where we feel like our group might need to commission a study group, to start during the summer and into next year. I'm not sure I had that in mind for any of these, but could happen.
Okay.
Dave, I think you had a comment or a.
I did. I think it's best if we go. So I think what you were just saying, Mila, go through each one, and ones that we, based on comments, feel like we can send some people off to write on, and other ones we need to put on the schedule for a docket. It makes just as much sense as anything else to me to start at the top and work our way down of the document, Dave.
Okay, sounds good. So discussion on 22.1. That's the first one, right? Yes.
Maybe a temperature check to just see, do people think like this needs the full IBS or a writing group, or is there another suggestion?
So look it over. Yeah, somebody just asked for a break. Do you want to take a real quick break and then we'll come back and do this?
Let's do that.
You've been at it for.
I was gonna ask if you guys took a break while I was gone, because I know going straight from one to the other. So
crack the whip, baby. Okay, let's come back at 7:30.
7:30 it is.
Excuse me.
Lisa must be in her car.
Yes, I am. I thought I was muted.
we can hear you driving, Teresa.
I'm glad you didn't have to yell at any drivers or anything.
I'm keeping it quiet while I drive.
All right, folks, most of us are back on. So let's go through one by one and discuss just real quick, and we'll talk about whether you want to do a writing group on it or whether you want to go through the entire process. So let's start with 22.1. How do you feel about that? And Dave, I know you wanted me to take a thumbs up on whether they wanted to do the entire process or whatever, but I think we need a little more how people are feeling about it before we do that. Does that sound like an idea? So 22.1, look it over and tell me whether you think you need the entire process or whether it could go to a team to rewrite. Dorman.
I do not feel like I need the entire process on 22.1.
I'm seeing a lot of people shaking heads no, I'm assuming you're agreeing with him that you don't need the process. I'm seeing bobbleheads is what I'm seeing. So this one, send to a writing group. Does that sound like a good plan? All right, let me see your thumbs, folks. Writing group. All right, 22.1 is going to a writing group. 22.6. Do you need the process or can this go to a writing group? Dave.
I feel like this could go to a writing group. To explain my answer, I feel like that this somehow doesn't capture what we had talked about when we wrote this language originally, and I'm not certain how it got written the way it is now.
Okay, Deborah?
100% blame that it's on me.
Oh, sorry about that, Dave. I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
Yep.
As the one who was working, stuff was put through accurately. I feel like I owe everybody a apology that I think when Mila and I were doing that work, it didn't get done correctly.
Okay, Deborah.
Well, I guess having said that, maybe I am changing, but I was feeling like that one, I kind of wanted to go through the process on. But if Dave wants to rewrite it to make it more clear, I'm okay with starting there.
Shelley.
I guess maybe it sounds like some members will disagree with me, but having, just gone through this, it wasn't last year, but it was the year before, and many of the members are still on this team. I'm not sure that we need to go through the process because it isn't reflecting what was intended. So I think we just need to work on it through a writing group.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. All right, let me see your thumbs on sending this to a writing group. Okay, and Deborah's thumb is sideways, so for the reason that you stated, right, Deborah? All right, so that's going to go to a writing group as well. 24.2. What are you
I feel like we
feeling?
need to do the process on this one, just because there's a choice involved, and I know there are consequences, and I of those choices, and I think they need to be thoroughly discussed before I would feel comfortable making a decision in that space.
Okay. Other discussion on this one?
Just that I'm still slightly confused, so I feel like we need to talk about it.
Sorry, and I'll jump in. This was the one I was talking about. Sorry, I missed which one we were talking about before. This is the one I want more conversation about.
Gotcha.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Confusion.
You were on the wrong one. Thanks, Deborah. So let me see your thumbs about doing the process on this one. And folks, I don't want to rush you. So if you're still thinking about it, go one more time. I didn't get everybody's thumb. All right. Process on this one. All right, 24.3.
Move that we send this to a writing group to adjust the language to practice.
Okay. So a writing group to adjust it to practice. I don't want to rush you, but okay, thumbs. All right, that's going to a writing group.
Sorry, can I don't know if this is appropriate, but I felt like on not this one we just did, but the one before, maybe some people were still thinking about it or were not sure. So I mean, I'm wondering if there really was consensus. I don't know.
I thought I saw everybody's thumb, Sandy, but if you didn't have your thumb up, I obviously didn't. Sorry about that.
No, I mean, I did, but just looking at, I don't know, some people's facial expressions or gestures or whatever, I wasn't, okay, there you go.
I've got Marty and Matt, so Marty.
I didn't want to call you out, Matt, but yeah.
My thumb was sideways, but I mean, if people want to have the full process, I'm not going to stand in that way.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, and I'm fine. I'm a thumbs up. I frankly am still pretty confused on what it is. So my personal buy-in to that particular item is not strong. And so I'm frankly more just dreading a long process for something I probably will never understand. So, but I'm fine going through it.
Okay, thanks, Matt. And just a reminder, folks, that the sideways thumb is a yes. I'll usually ask you, Marty, I didn't see your thumb. I'm sorry. I didn't see it being sideways, but thank you for sharing that. So Sandy, are we okay on that now?
I think Shelley's hand is up.
Shelley, go ahead.
I just think even based on what Mila has put in her trust, the others are kind of about matching language to current practice. And this one is about implementation and about confusion. So to me, just for that purpose alone, it feels like it needs to go through the process. I mean, the interest in and of itself seems to suggest that we should take it through the process.
Shelley, so that I'm clear on which one you're talking about, are you talking 24.3?
Well, I thought that's what we went back to. So yes.
Okay, I do, because I got a little confused as to which one we were talking about. So yes, okay. So
I think she's talking about 24.2.
That's what I'm.
That's
why I'm
parental leave
confused.
article. Mm-hmm.
Shelley, were you talking parental leave? Is that the one you were talking about? Okay, so that's 24.2. So
correct.
Okay, all right, and we do have the process on that one. All right. So back to 24.3, you had thumbed up a writing group, unless I missed some thumbs, and I'm not trying to rush, but you're really little on my screen, so be patient with me, please. All right, and the last one, 24.4. What do you want to do with this one?
I want to talk about it.
Okay, Allison? Dorman?
Yes, I want to talk about it. So, because it would be a change in practice.
So you're suggesting the process, correct? Seeing nodding heads. I don't want to rush you, but let me see the thumbs on 24.4 process. And I'll be more careful this time. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of sideways thumbs. Bo, Marty, Matt, I may have missed a couple. Do you want to say anything about it, or? Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, once again, I'm okay going through the process. I also was sort of just thinking it might actually be fairly simple, just based on all the work we did in the last few months on kind of defining like what makes it kind of a last minute where it kind of messes with people on all sides. So I kind of saw a quick personal right into it, but I'm not against going through the process. That's why I'm sideways.
Thanks, Matt. Marty?
Yeah, same. I feel like we did the heavy thinking around this already with the transfer work. And I mean, I would like it to align with that. So.
Okay. And then I'm going to go to Bo, and then I'll get your comment, Dave. Bo?
Yeah, same thinking. Feels very similar to work we recently did in kind of the interest value space, but not opposed. That's why it's sideways.
Thank you. Dave?
I agree with a lot of what you guys said as far as like the a lot of it aligns and is overlapping. So I was going to actually encourage us to before we delved into that discussion, to review our conversation around late resignations and that kind of stuff. Just the documents, not like out loud, but just review that document and review some of that interest and options, because I do feel like you're right that it's happening. But in order to figure out what the sweet spot is, we'll take the process to find that just right spot.
Okay. So what I have right now, this is what you've decided. 22.1 send to a writing group, 22.6 writing group, 24.2 process, 24.3 writing group, and 24.4 a process with a review of what you did earlier. Correct? So Mila, help me out, Dave, setting up the writing groups for those. Do you guys take care of that? Is that?
We usually ask for volunteers too from each straw design group. But I think we could just take, Dave and I think are generally a given, and then a couple from the district team and a couple from the DTA team. Seems to be a pretty good group size and process.
And go ahead, Dave.
I was just wondering, I wasn't, obviously I wasn't here for the end of our MOA conversation, but I did see a new calendar invite. So I'm assuming we got some more work for us to work on that. Okay, so I don't know if there's more that we need to talk about that one today. I almost wondered with some of these writing group ones, if we could take a moment and look at them and see if we could bring back some language to at least start, move it a little bit faster along. But obviously I wasn't part of the end of that last conversation, so I'm not certain where we're at.
Well, we did, for the MOA writing group, we did review the shared decision making as it stands right now, and we asked for some further input, gathered up some suggestions and questions and thoughts, and I think we're going to be prepared then for the meeting I set during break. Don't give me a break or I'll send you calendar invites. But yeah, so I think we did do that kind of gathering input from the team, and then with the commitment to bring back something that either may get approved or may need to go back for one more rinse and repeat. So we could potentially use a similarly constructed writing group if those people are grooving on that work, or a whole new cast of characters.
Don't forget, Mila, we quickly came to consensus as soon as Dave left on the one.
Thank you, Shelley. I did want to point out to the group how fast we came to consensus on the remaining MOA, Dave, as soon as you left the room.
The inside joke, Mila and I have a running joke about as soon as the other one leaves, all the work gets done super fast.
All right. So I'm assuming you want 3 separate writing groups for these 3.
I really
issues?
don't actually.
Okay.
I mean, Mila, tell me if I'm off.
No,
but I really feel like these are relatively short, relatively compact, similar topic that a group can come through with a couple of recommendations relatively quickly.
So I've assumed twice and I was wrong both times, so I'm done. All right, so volunteers for the writing group for 22 groups for group 4, 22.1, 22.6, and 24.3. Who would like to volunteer? Dave, Matt, Laura Leppy, Sandy. How many did you need? I'm sorry.
I just need one more administrator.
One more administrator.
Wait. Oh no. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, one more.
Yeah, you do need one more administrator.
So because Kristen's not here, she gets it, right? Is that how that works?
Oh, I think so. Kristen's on the other writing team.
For the same reason, I think, actually.
Kristen will never leave early again.
That's right.
So do you want Kristen on there?
I'll put her on there, but we'll see. All right.
All right, sounds good. So your writing group is Dave, Matt, Laura, Sandy, and Kristen, and Mila.
Matt and I
Correct?
can carry the water. Yeah, thank you.
All right. All right. So I think that was all you had on your agenda. Is that correct? So anything else for the good of the order tonight? Other than a checkout.
I don't know if no, let's.
Did you have something, Mila, or?
We had a short, we don't have the language yet, but we just wanted to give a short update on what the IHB writing group, work group, whatever we were calling it, I can't remember now, is where they're at. So we actually have a meeting, I think it's tomorrow, to come up with a formal written recommendation, and that should be ready for our next meeting in April for us to look at and review. Just as a reminder, just to start shaking those cobwebs, the group was charged with updating and streamlining some of the processes in the IHB Intermediate Hours Board realm, and also updating the language, so that we weren't talking about audio correspondence courses anymore, and really trying to move into what's the current offerings and how to best apply them based on our best practices that we've been trying to apply, but not in a very consistent, transparent manner, because we've kind of had to make up rules because the rules haven't been updated in a while. So that group is getting some good work done tomorrow, and be excited to have a fuller report for you guys at our next meeting.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, so let's start a checkout thought for the day. We're going to start with Matt.
Yeah, good work, making progress, steady but sure. So have a good night, everybody.
Ian.
I would certainly second that sentiment. Necessary work, and happy to be a part of it.
Kathy.
I'll just say steady work. Good job.
Laura Mitchell.
Cheered me up. We got some stuff done, so.
Marty.
Felt super productive. Not sure it had to do with Dave taking a break or not, but was just really steady and really great work. And thanks.
Dave Lockley.
Apparently I need to take an hour-long break for every meeting, and we'd be done in no time flat. So no, really appreciate the trust that you all, that I have in all with you, that I could go and step off and take care of a family matter and not worry about the direction everyone was going. So it felt, I was, although I was nervous to get back in just because I wanted to get back to work, it was nice to know that we're in that space where we can trust each other and know that we'll still be good, whether it's I or Chris being off today, and we can still make good progress.
Laura Leppy.
I really enjoyed tonight. Yeah, lots of good progress. I'm super stoked to be on my first writing committee, and I appreciate all the work. And I learned so many things tonight about so much stuff. It was really exciting.
Nancy.
That's what I was going to say, Laura. Lots of good information that's helpful in making decisions, and we appreciated Trace being part of it as well. So thanks.
Dorman.
I agree with Dorman, yeah. I agree with Dorman, yeah. I agree with Dorman, yeah.
They're gracious.
Wow, that was interesting. It was a good night. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. It's amazing how much you still don't know about the functioning of a district after you've been here for 20 years.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree, Heather. I was having a similar thought, and I guess I would just add it can only be a good thing when so many of us, and then by extension our circles of influence, can talk to just how complex this work is. So thanks, everyone. Good chipping away tonight.
Heather Espinoza.
I would agree. Great information down in the weeds and good progress tonight. And that was hilarious. Thank you, Dorman.
Shelley.
I just felt grateful for an opportunity to see all your faces again. It seemed like a long time since I'd seen you, and we jumped right back in with both feet and hit the ground running.
Deborah.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of good information. My brain hurts, but yeah, it was great information. Mila, thanks for all the hard work, and thanks again to Trace for being here.
Teresa.
Lots of great work tonight and lots of new information for all of us to take in, but I felt like we did great work, and I know there's a lot more to do, and so I look forward to that work.
Allison.
Yeah, awesome night. I feel like I learn so much every time we have a meeting, and that's awesome. And also we TA'd things, so yay.
Linda.
FMLA is so confusing.
Sandy.
I was talking to someone in another school district the other night, and it just reminds me of how grateful I am to have the relationship that this group has, to have really honest conversation, really upfront questions, and the willingness for everyone to listen and to answer. So thank you all.
Mila.
I just got to say thanks for hanging with me as I drug you through the weeds tonight. Yeah, nobody should have to do that late in the evening in the spring. Thank you.
Jim.
Oh, thanks for your work. And Mila, I'd add to that, sometimes we just want to say nobody should have to do that. So thanks for your work. FMLA is difficult.
It
and
is.
It's fairly new, and it's getting ready to change again.
Thank you all for your work. You guys work together extremely well, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody.